Elden Ring?
Yeah, like after the fact, like, you know, after it's launched and everything like that. Maybe we can.
Well, we're not going to be playing it before it's launched.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but, you know, a few weeks after, and maybe we can see if.
I mean, unless you're lucky enough to get a review code for it, in which case, bless you. But
No,
good luck, because
I didn't even reach out for one because I figured it was one of those things that is going to be completely dominated by, you know, larger creators and stuff. So I didn't even reach out for it. Also, I wasn't like super interested in it because I'm, again, reserving about every expectation I possibly can for it. So
as you should, because we all know what happens when we get our expectations up without precedent.
Yep, that's true. Chad, I'm gonna put some points into vitality. Can you believe it? Can you?
Yeah,
even...
Garrison, and everyone's going to be streaming that game too, Garrison.
Oh yeah,
like,
no, and I've seen a few people talk about wanting to use that as like maybe a potential growth. It's going to be extremely rare for people to hook on unless you already have a pretty large install base, and even when you do, it's going to be very difficult for growth just because it's a big. It's just a big thing. There's going to be tons of people doing it, and especially when you look at the climate on Twitch and all that stuff these days, it is saturated. And you could take a look at games like Lost Ark, where, I mean, you know, if you're not up in the multi-thousands, you're buried, right? Like, it is, you're never going to be able to catch that. And I think that Elden Ring is going to be even bigger than that naturally, even with Amazon's weird promotion of that game. Not Elden Ring, Lost Ark. But yeah, that's going to be a nasty like category to attempt to grow in, which is why whenever I play it, I'm just going to play it. We're just going to have a good time, and that's probably going to be the end of it. It's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the correct approach under the circumstances. You're not trying to build a career on it, and in fact, you're trying to do the opposite and not build a career on it.
Yeah, typically we don't want to bind ourselves to. I would imagine most of us who were around during the early days don't want to bind ourselves to Souls in that capacity because. You know, I know you still dig it, but at the same time, you know, I know you really enjoy, you know, indie games and stuff like that, and you know, nowadays and streaming that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, once again, if you do bang AGS in chat, you go see Spy's Twitch channel. He does stuff. Hasn't done a lot recently because he's been busy, but he will be doing that again here soon, to my knowledge. So.
Had a ton of stuff that I've been working on the past couple of months, and probably will continue to be working on the next couple. So I won't be able to return to my regular streaming schedule, unfortunately, for some time. But I'm looking forward to that time when it comes.
When the day comes. Well, go follow him, just in case, you know, if you haven't, to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Patches is disgusting in this game. Like, he is probably one of the best examples of how gross these faces are. Like, he is a vile creature.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, have you seen his face in Dark Souls 1?
Yeah, but he looks nice in Dark Souls 1, charming, awful. But like this, he just looks strange. So, yeah, Patches looks like this place smells.
The demons haven't got to you, have they?
Like, pay attention, chat, to the facial expressions and everything, and look at how strange and awkward it is. Like, it drives me nuts. It's one of the few things I just do not like about this. It's so weird.
I wonder if that was specifically intentional for Patches in particular, that they wanted his expressions to be kind of forced and weird and untrustworthy.
I would say that's true. If everybody else didn't do pretty much the exact same thing.
You got me.
It's like all of them look like that to an extent. I would say the most subdued is probably Maiden in Black. Like, that's I just didn't even think they needed to have like.
Well, you can't really change her design at all.
Mm-hmm. Kick me in, baby. Yeah. Last time we had something really strange happen. So, if you push Patches in, typically he'll become hostile, right?
Yes, because he takes too much damage from the fall.
He hits the damage threshold, right? So we had something really strange happen where he fell in, and we either killed him or something. I can't remember what it was, but due to the sequence we did stuff in, he still ended up showing up in the Nexus, and he was friendly, which. I didn't know that could happen if you were, like, aggressive to him or whatever, or killed him or whatever it was. So I found that very strange that he, for some reason, was, like, still in the Nexus, which I guess he can do. I don't know.
This game has some really weird event flags, yeah, and it sounds to me as though you discovered an inconsistency in the event flags. It's probably just something their QA team never thought to test in that specific order, and so they never wrote in a countermeasure for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's decent damage. I guess you did level up your magic. Normally, when I come through here on soul level 1 runs, I'm barely scratching this guy.
Oh yeah, he's a big pain in the ass if you don't. I think I was thinking about this and a few other spots. I know. I end up getting what is it? Water Veil or whatever it's called for Flame Lurker because he is just.
Yes.
God, he's a huge pain in the ass without that. Like especially if you're doing a. Either you haven't leveled up a lot, or you've maybe leveled up a lot of damage and you're still at low vit. Because then if you take one clock from Flame Lurker, like you're done. Like that's it. And that is a humongous pain in the butt to get to him and then make a bad roll and then just get knocked over or whatever. So
yeah, and it's not like Flame Lurker's the kind of fight where you can just use a shield. Not unless it's a really big shield, and the only really big shield that works against him is the purple flame shield, or the only one that you're likely to be able to use by the time you go through there.
Yeah, but you have to get that by the dragons, I think, right? I think what is it? The Ring of Great Strength, the Flame Shield, and what else is over there?
It's just the Ring of Great Strength and the purple flame shield, and then a bunch of grass and some souls.
That's what it is. It's the grass. I couldn't remember if there was any other.
Yeah, there's some consumable items, but that's the only equipment is the ring and the shield.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if there was excuse me. If there was anything else. The grass. Hey, Patches, you knocked me in the hole, you dick.
You. Hey, I'm really sorry.
Despite some trial and error, you should be. Oh, thank you, Sanguine. That's very sweet of you. That's very kind. I need to go actually check the PO box because I think there is something else there. Maybe I'm not sure. PO box is always a wild, wacky adventure. You're into like kind of strange candies and things like that, as am I. And maybe not strange candies, but you're into shit like that. The point is,
I'll try anything at least once, or almost anything.
Because I know you're not a big candy person, but I know you're into obtuse shit. So it's somebody Jigakuro sent me a bag because I like black licorice a lot. Like I'm one of the few people who actually enjoys it.
Okay, I can respect that. Yeah.
And I've always liked it. My mom liked it. And which is probably half the reason I like it because I had it at a young age and developed a taste for it, I guess. But so it was really funny because he actually sent me some Norwegian black licorice.
The good stuff.
No, well, Norwegian salted black licorice.
Oh, that stuff. Okay.
And
yeah. All right. Say no more. I've had it.
Yeah, that was So I tried it and I'm like, this is okay. Like it was okay at first, and then like it's almost like it's too salty. Like there's a lot of salt in there. And I understand that salty can boost the level of sweet that you experience, and that's kind of the gist of it. Oh damn, I'm dead. I know that can boost like the gist of it, but it was a lot of salt, and a couple people in chat were like, yeah, I like it or whatever. But yeah, no, I was not a fan, and my wife came in to try it. She came in to try it, took like one bite and was like, oh god, and like ran to the bathroom because it was just it's just not what you're expecting. It's even more like salty and strange, I guess, than you would originally assume that it was going to be. So
okay, yeah, I thought you were talking about like some primo Norwegian brand of regular old black licorice that
no I would imagine that's probably pretty good if it's just like standard type black licorice. Like I'd probably be super into that. I just this was definitely intense, and even a couple of our Norwegian folks in chat were like, yeah, it ain't like it ain't great. I'm not even a fan of it or whatever. But
well, no, I mean nobody in the Scandinavia part of the world likes strumming. Nobody there eats that.
I mean, they might. We don't know. We actually, I think that specifically came up because we were talking about the different types of like fermented fish. That's like, all right, I caught a fish. I'm gonna go bury it in my backyard.
Or in Iceland, a shark that we're going to leave to rot and ferment until the poisonous compounds in its blood literally evaporate into the air. Yeah,
which is just that's something else, man. Like, again, I'm all about trying stuff, and I've gone in several times on natto, and like I get it, but at the same time I didn't really grow up with it, so it's not something that I'm particularly fond of, right? Like I'm definitely not gonna be seeking it back out, and I understand why people do, but it's
well, you
not
tried it once. That's the important thing.
Yeah,
right?
and it's just not for me. It's not like terrible or anything, right? Like, but definitely not my cup of tea for sure. So
yeah,
I feel the same way about like
good on you for trying it though.
Well, there's a lot of people who like hate like fried okra, and I I love it because it's a southern thing for the most part.
You grew up where they eat that regularly, fried okra.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love fried okra, you know, growing up as a kid, and I like it as an adult, as long as it's good. Some okra can be a bit kind of squishy and unappealing, but if you fry it right, it's really good. So
You know, it's funny you mention that because I've never actually had fried or fresh okra, but I had I was visiting my parents one time, and my mother had gotten I don't even know where she got. I think it came from a health food store somewhere, but she'd gotten like dried okra chips that were seasoned with some kind of spicy jalapeno or chipotle seasoning, and those were not bad, surprisingly.
that is interesting. So they were like a dried type okra that was more of just like a chip type deal. Then
yeah,
that actually sounds pretty good. Have you ever had
those were fine.
You ever had like pea crisps? So like they're just like dried peas. Mm.
Yeah, they're the ones that are you thinking of the ones that are actually dried peas though? Or are you thinking of the ones that are like textured potato protein shaped and flavored like peas?
They're actual peas. I like dried peas for sometimes. It's one of the. It has a very particular taste to it, but the interesting part of that is I actually like dried chickpeas a lot more than I like dried peas. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you get a nice seasoning on dried chickpeas, they can be really nice.
Yeah, like I like garbanzo, like in general. I mean, they're pretty good, but they're a great source of protein.
Hummus? Do you like them in that form?
In what?
Hummus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My godmother was actually Lebanese, and they worked in the restaurant business. As did some of my family. Which you know all this, but chat doesn't get the specifics because I ain't trying to dox myself. Anyway, so she was extremely proficient in making hummus, and I remember I was very young when I first tried it, and my mom didn't think I'd like it because most kids, I mean, you're not gonna be like, ooh, yay, hummus, right? Like, but
it's
I tried it.
It's not the kind of thing you typically expect a kid is being excited to
Yeah,
eat,
yeah, for sure. And so I tried it, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was one of my favorite things. And then she was so sweet; she would actually make me hummus anytime she knew I was going to be at a gathering that I was going to be there. So she would make me my own little plate of it, or not plate of it, but like bowl of it.
Nice of her.
But yeah, it's always really nice. I guess it's exciting when like, you know, I know for a fact that it's exciting when a kid likes your cooking. Because I have this really funny story. Well, because like they're so raw in their like they're not gonna sugarcoat it, right? They're gonna sit there and they're gonna tell you exactly how it is for the most part. But
yeah, zero filters. They're gonna just spit it right out on the floor, and you'll know if they like it or not.
Right, and so when I even like teenagers and stuff like that, they're definitely kind of in that same group of folks who would normally be very honest. And
Jesus Christ, Nick, I'm sorry. We need to read the thing Pink Blood just wrote in chat.
I swear to God, is it the garbanzo? Is it the garbanzo on my face joke? I swear to God, if it's that joke.
Oh, you've seen this before.
That is like, I swear to God, if it's the garbanzo. I was thinking about that joke as I was talking about it. You know the difference between garbanzo beans and chickpeas? I wouldn't pay $500 to have garbanzo bean on my face. God. Anyway.
This is not Pink Blood's first rodeo, clearly, nor is it yours, I guess.
No, God, I've heard that joke so many times. It's a good one, though. It's a good one, don't get me wrong. I hate this section with, like, low durability anything, because it's such a pain in the butt.
Throw on the Thief Ring.
Oh, yeah, I guess we could do the Thief Ring. I'm a little bit... Oh, God. Oh, God, we did it. Oh, no. Oh, how'd you do it? Vault! Perfect. Anyway, what were we right, so... For when we went to Chile, thank you for the follow, and Uncle Alex, thank you for the host. When we went to Thanksgiving, which we have at my sister's since we no longer have our family home after my mom passed away, we typically do like a kind of everybody brings their own dish and whatever, you know, that whole deal. And so I decided that for Thanksgiving I was going to do a air fried Brussels sprout medley. You know, had like carrots and air fried Brussels sprouts, and it was really good, and I liked it a lot. And I thought it was good, but so anyway, my nephew, who I guess is normally not the biggest vegetable eater, he had it, and he said he was like, Uncle Nick, I didn't know vegetarian stuff could be so good, and I'm laughing at that because because they know I am, but you know, it's like it's not vegetarian, it's just vegetable. This isn't some like specific, you know, whatever like vegetarian dish. I was like, I mean, it's applicable. I was like, but it's just funny that he just the idea of saying I didn't know vegetarian stuff could be so good. I'm like, it's vegetables, but yes. But I was very pleased that he liked it, because I would, like I said, I always feel like you know, if you're gonna get a raw review, it's probably gonna be from like a kid or a teenager or whatever. Like,
well, congratulations on the positive feedback on your cooking, Nick. I'm very impressed.
Oh yeah, no, I was very, very pleased, and they asked to keep what was left instead of me taking them leftovers. And I was like, yeah, you could absolutely have it. Brussels sprouts cost like $3, so you totally take it.
See, that's one of the things that I've encountered so much, it just breaks my heart, is that people are traumatized on vegetables because they've only ever had vegetables prepared badly. And you and I are not that far apart in age. We come from more or less the same generation. Our parents, I think, come from more or less the same generation. And you were raised in the United States, so you know this in particular. And I mean, I guess to a large degree I was too. There's this phenomenon where our parents were taught that food should be healthy. And the definition of healthy in those days, we're talking, it really originated, I think, in like the 60s and the 70s, but it carried through all the way till the 80s and even the 90s, was this philosophy of healthy means no seasoning, no flavor.
Right.
You know, it means boiled or steamed everything until it has no texture even, and it's just mush.
Yeah, just sog.
And that's every vegetable I ever had as a kid, because my parents didn't know how to cook any other way.
Yeah.
My mother, I mean, the only thing that I liked was my mother's cooking, because she knew so little of how to cook that her idea of dinner would be spaghetti and sauce out of a jar. And in comparison to my father's cooking, I preferred that. Because my father is the kind of guy who he'll take a big pot, put it on the stove, and dump in everything but the goddamn kitchen sink.
Right.
To the point where you can't identify what you're eating. So
which is really funny, yeah.
That's what I grew up with, and that's why when a culinary arts course was offered in my senior year of high school in the U.S., I was like, God, finally, I'm saved. Salvation. I can provide for myself.
Yeah, we unfortunately, and this is kind of sad, because like I guess it really wasn't that. I don't really know how to describe this, because I don't want this to come across as like really bad or anything like that. It's just kind of how things were. So we had a lot of family members who were, you know, chefs or whatever. We had a lot of people who would cook, and I do need to put on the thief ring for this, otherwise I'm gonna be dying. I also forgot to kill the guy on the first set of stairs. Anyway, so I grew up around a lot of people who did know how to cook and all that stuff, but due to just kind of how things were, like, the men in the family typically wouldn't go and like help cook or whatever, and I would go ask sometimes, because I like doing whatever. But really, you know, my mom would teach me some stuff, but realistically I would kind of get urged to, you know, go back in the den and, you know, hang out with the I'm dead again. I don't know. I lived, bitch.
Shepherded out of the kitchen so that the women could do their thing,
not like
you could be with the men.
Yeah, not like in a negative like way, like not like somebody's like you have to do this, but again, that wasn't quite. You know, that's all the boys are in here watching whatever, so you need to go do that, right? Like, which sucks, because that means that I didn't get as many opportunities to learn from my mom as far as her cooking goes, and you know, all that stuff, which is a shame, because she was very good, and you know, but. And naturally, when there was like food from like the other folks who were in the restaurant business and things like that, I didn't really get to interface with them quite as much, because they were more extended family than, you know, like direct, you know, immediate. So it just sucks that like I didn't get to learn quite as much, or wasn't as interested in a lot of like food offerings or whatever for a long time, because it was just not something I was really focused on. I would just eat what people would make, and that was kind of the end of it, right? Like.
It wasn't emphasized to you, yeah. Whereas I would guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did your mother frequently invite your sister into the kitchen to do stuff with her when she was cooking? Yes. Yeah, my sister probably learned the most from my mom in terms of like cooking or whatever. But thankfully, I had a feeling. I think she made my mother made a fantastic marinara, and I did have the recipe for that, and she would traditionally use meat. It was a meat sauce, which. A lot of people do. They do like a ground beef or a chicken or something like that in their marinara, which is pretty common.
But
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and it's really good. And thankfully, you know, I did have her recipe, so I was able to mimic that and make a vegetarian version of it that's really good, which is not hard. You just effectively omit the meat. So, but I did have a hard time kind of. The hardest part about that is replicating because while meat itself doesn't really contribute like this ton of flavor or anything like that, it does add something to it, and it can. So trying to figure out how to make it feel hearty and really good without that was definitely kind of a task, but I'm pretty happy with the way it comes out.
I would say meat adds richness, right? It adds, some substance.
Yeah,
you
it can.
Feel like
yeah.
you're eating something filling, and meat might not be a huge prominent flavor, but hearty is a good word.
Yeah, and I think that mushrooms and things like that can offer a lot of that savoriness that meat can sometimes offer. But the problem is
a lot of people use mushrooms as a substitute for meat in like hamburgers. They're portobello burgers have been popular for years.
Yeah, and I'm not crazy on mushrooms. I never have been. Not that I hate them or anything. Here again. Always hated this bit with certain characters. It's fine on like heavier like melee oriented characters. I've always struggled with this on sorcery because I guess we need to.
Well,
you know what I probably need to do?
Getting by this guy, and the trick to getting by him is
go left and roll around
him. You sprint around him on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like you should fall off the ledge, but you don't.
Yeah.
And if you keep moving and don't stop from the moment he sees you, you'll have just enough time to get past him before the laser goes off.
Which is really funny because I think the first time I went through, I think that's exactly what I did. But of course now I'm over here switching up the formula. But I'm also yakking about stuff. But yeah, so I didn't get a lot of chances to learn. I didn't get a lot of chances to learn, how to. Not how to cook, because like I knew more like I don't know. I just didn't get to learn a lot of the things I kind of wish I had, because I would have preferred, instead of reading off a recipe, I would have preferred learning how to make my mother's pasta sauce from her, like directly, because you never know, like maybe the recipe's got something jotted down, but there's something else maybe she does that's small or perceivably minuscule that can really add a lot to it or whatever. But yeah, there's not a lot of mushrooms that I'm super into. There's a few that I can get around the texture, but some of them I really struggle with because they're just not. It's just something about the texture of them just always kind of like rub me the wrong way or whatever.
Well, if you enjoy the flavor but not the texture, sometimes what you can do is just dice the mushrooms up into really tiny pieces, because that way you get the flavor, but they're not really big enough for you to notice the texture if it's something you don't like. And there are, I've had crispy mushrooms that were seared in a cast iron skillet where that same type of mushroom would have been a problem for me as a kid texture-wise, but seared crispy with, butter and a pinch of salt and a little bit of rosemary and extra virgin olive oil. Yeah, I can get on board.
Oh, yeah, I agree, too. I think that... What you doing? There we go. I think, like, my favorite mushrooms I ever had, I can't remember exactly what type it is. You might actually remember. It's like a white mushroom that is a bit more rigid.
Sounds like a lion's mane mushroom, maybe.
I fell in the crack. Oh, no.
Lots of people have died that way, myself included.
Oh, no. I've probably done that every time I play this game. Yeah, perfect, Griggs. We nailed it. As Gorilla's staring off in the sunset. That was that emote was made as a joke, and it has rapidly become one of my favorites, because it's just beautiful. It's kind of...
Which emote?
Just the one at the back of my head.
Oh, okay, the one you're using as your character avatar.
Oh, yeah, for Discord.
Yeah.
No, something about it just kills me.
I do like it, I have to say. It's very... It conveys a lot of attitude without even a facial expression.
Got a good feel. Oh, hang on a second, I gotta respond to this really quick.
Yeah, take your time. While you're doing that, I will expand upon the point about Brussels sprouts, because that's a particularly traumatic vegetable for a lot of people.
Oh, you're gonna have to let me get in on that.
Yeah, by all means, absolutely. Let me just dig up a couple of images here.
All right. We ready to talk about Brussels and how shit like boiling them is like the biggest, just the worst thing ever that you can do to that vegetable.
Yes, it is an affront. It is an affront. Here, hang on.
Front. It sure is.
It's an affront to vegetables everywhere, and vegetables get a bad enough rap as it is by people not knowing how to cook them, and then feeding them to their kids for 18 years,
Right.
and then traumatizing their kids and making their kids hate vegetables. And it became a meme when we were kids. It got so bad. Oh, hey, Captain Tuna.
Captain
It
Tuna.
became-
That's a good name.
Yeah, he's one of mine. He's, well, I mean, I can't claim he's mine, but he's a regular of mine who, hello, Tuna. Welcome.
He's one of mine. Like, whoa.
You get familiar with your community after a while, Nick. You know how it is.
God. I was so not ready for he's one of mine. I'm like, oh. Do you remember, before we deviate back to Brussels sprouts or the illustrious Captain Tuna?
I meant it in
what
a
is-
more military sense. I'm sorry. Like,
you-
he's one of ours. He's on our side.
Do you remember what's the upgrade for Crescent Falchion? Is it a Moonstone?
Dark Moonstone.
Dark Moonstone. Okay.
Or they changed the name of it in the remake. I think it's now called Moonshade Stone.
That's it, yeah. It's actually a good name. But...
You can still be mine if you want to, Torin.
Give him to me. Oh god. I think I'm gonna do something other than Shrouded Storms before I carry on, because I'm not a huge fan of doing this right after
That's okay. Yeah, find some place that's a little bit less necessary that you pay attention.
yeah.
But so Brussels sprouts, right? The issue with Brussels sprouts, and it became a meme when you and I were kids. We would see on commercials at the time that there'd be a commercial for like Cap'n Crunch or some other really sweet cereal, and the commercial would just be making this really on-the-nose joke about, lol, vegetables sure taste like shit, don't they? Wouldn't you rather eat this cereal full of high fructose corn syrup and artificial coloring? And then there'd of course be kids in the commercial going, yeah, artificial coloring is the best.
Hooray.
And the entire reason that happened is because the generation our parents grew up in were taught by these fad diet cookbooks and TV chefs that the only good Brussels sprouts are Brussels sprouts that have no flavor.
Uh-huh.
And that are boiled or steamed with no seasonings at all. So we grew up with our parents only knowing how to cook that kind of vegetables, and of course we were freaking traumatized on it. But I owe go ahead.
Oh no, I was just talking to myself. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it, because I'm just gonna take it slower than I was, because that's the problem,
Okay.
is I'm taking it a little too fast.
I believe in you, Nick.
We
can
can
this.
do it, everybody. We're good at video games here.
Yeah, right. Well, we're good at talking. The video games are just kind of
We're good at talking.
Say we're
You're
streaming.
good at video games. Don't lie.
I'm better at talking than I am at video games, Nick, and you wouldn't even know
I don't
that
know.
to listen
I don't
to
know
me
about
tonight.
that.
But
Wait,
yeah,
that sounded super negative. I didn't mean it like that.
No. I
I
didn't
just
take
realized
it
how that came
way.
across. Like, you're not good at talking. You're better at video games.
No, I'm better at talking than I am at video games. So if I'm bad at video games, I don't know what that says about my
Welcome
speech.
to
But
Bitter Bits.
anyway, yeah, Schlemp, you were one of the lucky ones that you at least got butter and pepper. Not all of us were that fortunate.
No. Not even close.
The Brussels sprouts that I was always fed by my parents as a kid were always steamed. They never had any seasoning, and they were steamed to the point that they were universally overcooked. Like they had no texture left at all.
Right.
And they were just miserable to eat. And my parents wouldn't even put out any seasonings to put on them when you'd had them on your plate. So I succumbed to that, and I hated vegetables as a kid. And it wasn't until I took that culinary arts course in high school, and shortly before that, a mentor of mine where I was volunteering at the time introduced me to Japanese food. I was 16 the first time I ever ate sushi. And my mentor, who was about 4 years older than me, basically said, hey, Franz, you want to come out for food? I'm going to a Japanese restaurant that I know. And I said, well, I've never had Japanese food, and I'm a little bit apprehensive about it because I grew up in America, and in America there's this huge stigma about anything that isn't pasta or hamburgers.
Right.
You know, anything that's remotely exotic. There's just this knee-jerk fear of it. But I thought, well, I'm with someone I trust. This is someone I don't think would deliberately screw me over or steer me wrong. So I'll give him a chance. And I don't know, maybe he'll teach me something.
Yeah.
And so I
Now-
went out to sushi with him, and I ended up being genuinely pleasantly surprised. Like, to me, as a 16-year-old having grown up in America, the concept of eating raw fish was something you do not do because, you know, you can get sick. But I went, and I had a lot of really good sushi there, and I had some other appetizers and things I'd never tried before, and it opened my eyes in many ways, and it made me more willing to try new things because I'd had at least one good experience, and I thought, all right, I'll try new experiences in the future. So then I get to the culinary arts course, and we're learning how to make things like creamy chicken enchiladas, and fluted mushroom caps stuffed with cheese, and that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, I never knew that some of this stuff could be made good. And then that got me more curious to learn on my own, and I started doing my own research after I graduated and experimenting and trying and learning. And what it came down to was that about a year ago, one of my moderators had been traumatized on Brussels sprouts probably more than any other person I've ever met in my life. And my heart goes out to this poor guy because he can't be in the same room with Brussels sprouts. He
What
can't smell
happened?
them.
Did they
What
become
happened is-
sentient and start beating him up before school?
No, what happened is he's British.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because in the UK, I thought we had it bad in the US growing up. But the way they treat vegetables in the UK, there's an episode of QI where Sandy Toksvig and Alan Davies sum it up perfectly, where she'd talk about how she would go to her mother's house, or her mother would come over to her house and stay for about an hour. And then after an hour, her mother would say, "Oh, I really must be going. I left the potato boiling on the stove at home."
God.
So that's the British approach to vegetables, is as Alan Davies summed it up in the next sentence, that we boil them in a pot until you can smear them up and down the wall like paint.
Well, I feel like a lot of that's it's utilitarian, and I think it's just, I don't know. There's part of that. There's some cultural reasons, I think, why British food is kind of the way it is. But
There absolutely are. Yes, don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying lol British food da poo poo.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, you know. And their way of handling vegetables is in many cases even worse than in the U.S. And so I thought, okay, I can't let this stand. I have to help this poor boy. So I spent the next week and a half. And I still have them, actually. I spent the next week and a half devising a recipe for what I felt was the type of Brussels sprouts that would be most likely to help cure him and to help him get over his...
cure him.
Yeah, to help him get over his trauma with Brussels sprouts. And so what I came up with was Brussels sprouts au gratin, and I'm going to post a few pictures of what I turned out in chat. And this is what I came up with. It's an au gratin dish that uses Brussels sprouts and a Mornay sauce, which ordinarily you would get in macaroni and cheese, but it uses a really nice Mornay sauce with British cheeses. It uses double Gloucester, and I think I might have used some Stilton in it. I can't remember exactly what. But it's a really nice, like, super high-end Mornay sauce. And I also used fresh herbs and bacon and shallots and all sorts of other really nice stuff. I added a nice breaded crust on top, a crispy bread crust seasoned with curry seasoning. And I was very happy with how it came out. And I'm hoping that if I manage to meet him in person, I will be able to prepare this for him and hopefully change his mind about Brussels sprouts. But, like, this is what it takes to undo that kind of trauma. It takes, like, scientific research and experimenting to devise a recipe with the maximum good flavor possible to undo the traumatic memories of steamed, unseasoned Brussels sprouts.
Well, I feel like that looks amazing. They probably also, if they were willing to give it a shot, just go into like a like we were talking about earlier, just even like a very simple, just half the problem with Brussels sprouts is the consistency of them, because it's just an issue where people run into it, and again, if they have them like boiled or steamed or whatever, they're not going to be great. They have a very weird smell to them. A lot of people do not like the smell of Brussels sprouts like that, and that's mostly the problem. And that looks fantastic what you made. So, that's which is great. Like I would imagine that would probably help a lot.
I would hope. The point of it was to alleviate that smell you're talking about, because, yeah, I know the smell very well. It's burned into my memory. And it is. Like, it really, you never forget it. But I thought, well, okay, I need to add as much good flavor as I can to help get rid of that bad smell so that you can smell a little bit of the sweetness of the Brussels sprouts, but then there's just the cheese and the bacon and the shallots and all of the other nice stuff that goes into it, and you're not like, oh god, this is unseasoned and it's mush.
We just had a cat interruption.
So I see. Look at him. I love him. You're lucky that such a nice cat just showed up and said, well, I live here now.
Yeah, he was super kind. We were actually worried that he might be somebody's, but he didn't have a microchip and he didn't seem to have another home, so, come on, buddy.
Honestly, even if he was somebody's, he seems to prefer it where he is now, from the look of him.
Like we got jammed up here. I think I am going to go back with my original plan of go do something else, because I'm not feeling this right now. I need to, if I were to do this, I would need to either upgrade the Crescent Falchion to hit a little bit harder so we can just kind of wiggle on through there, or get a bit more spell damage so we can actually one-shot the Reaper dudes, because having to juggle them with low vitality, especially with the way they cast, if you get hit by any of them, you're going down at this stage. So we're gonna go do Stonefang.
Sounds good to me. Oh yeah, Squatus. My preparation was a lot more elaborate because I was trying to optimize it, and you know me, I min-max my cooking just as much as I min-max my builds in video games. And the idea being, you can make that really elaborate version and then just scale it down. You don't have to spend 5 hours on the prep, but it was proof of concept is really what it amounted to.
Yeah. And again, I think they are probably one of those are one of those vegetables that is absolutely mostly just hinges on the preparation of them, because even if you were to throw some salt and some pepper and like a little bit of like oil and just toss it and then throw it in the oven at 400 degrees for however long, they would be beyond passable, right? Like it'd be so much better than trying to either boil them or steam them or whatever. So
by comparison to the 1980s treatment of Brussels sprouts, yeah, you'd still be dealing with worlds better than that.
Definitely.
And Eboera proffers a perfectly acceptable solution as well, which is the Filipino method, which he says, first you become very poor and from an immigrant family. Well, that much I've done already, Eboera. I'm right there. Then you saute them bitches with Chinese sausage, onions, red onion, bok choy, vinegar, soy sauce, and season to taste. Again, perfectly acceptable alternative.
Yep. I think I'm remembering why, because normally what I do is, if we're doing magic, we'll go to Stonefang immediately after you get Crescent and bumped up magic, because Stonefang is not terrible with magic or like the Crescent Falchion, because everything here is not super resistant to it. Because these guys are a pain in the ass if you're running something like a Crushing Battle Axe, because
pure physical build struggles.
Yeah, because you need like the piercing attack to be able to punch through these guys in any reasonable capacity.
Absolutely, and the magic element is really helpful here too, because they have no defense against it, or very little.
And now we got to deal with the dogs.
Yeah, I feel partly compelled to apologize for derailing everything with food chat, but
why would you? We've been talking about random stuff all night. Why would you worry about that?
Well, because I think at this point we've talked about food more than we've talked about video games,
Good.
which is okay with me, but
Good. There's nothing wrong with that.
I just want to make sure you're cool with it, because I didn't want to hijack your stream and turn it into cooking with
Absolutely
Spy.
not. We never talk about anything other than video games here, right, chat? Never. There was some nightmare question I asked people the other night, and I can't remember what it was now. I normally try to pitch chat some really horrendous hypothetical scenarios that really have no good outcome, and just see what the hell they have to say about it.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that... Uh-oh. Hang on. Kildred, speaking of min-maxing, what would I say is the easiest high-calorie dense food? Well, technically, Kildred, it's gasoline, which I believe has 30,000 plus calories per gram, but it will also kill you.
Nah, you'll be all right. Don't try it.
No, don't, please.
Do not. Whenever somebody's like, I heard on the internet that them boys playing them there Diamond Souls said to drink gasoline. You know
No,
what, though?
don't-
We don't
don't.
even have to do that disclaimer because there were people
I
being
hope
told
not.
that bleach would cure COVID, and they did it. So I can't.
People were popping Tide Pods on
Yeah,
TikTok
I
for
can't.
views.
It is whatever at this point. Also, thank you again,
Sometimes
Azot,
I
for the
hate
70
this
months.
timeline.
I appreciate
Go ahead,
it.
sorry.
That's okay. I was going to thank Garrison, too, with the $5. Says, Nick steamrolls Demon Souls while Franz waxes philosophic. Hey, I don't actually think it's been that bad on that tonight. I actually think it's been... We've had a relatively diverse pool of conversation. I think everything's been great. I've been having a good time.
I'm glad to hear that. That means, well, that means I don't have to think too hard about revising my formula next time we do this.
No, I don't. We've done, like, mostly the same thing every time. However,
I suppose we
the
have.
conversation... The only thing that really changes is the conversations.
Well, it changes depending on who you have as a guest. When it's me, I feel like it's the same topic every time. It's food, tea, and then, you know, when your cat
We
shows
have
up,
barely
oh,
talked about tea or whatever. We've talked about like different food stuff. We haven't really talked about tea. We maybe
I
briefly.
suppose we haven't today. Yeah, that's.
No.
Honestly, though, food has been plenty engaging for me. I don't know about you, and chat seems on board with it, so that's good.
Oh right, I forgot to go stuff all my stuff in the box. I always forget the demon says item wait until it's too late. I'm like, yeah, shit.
Well, you can send items back to your storage now in this.
Oh,
version of
they
the
did
game.
add that, didn't they?
Yeah, so
Oh,
you
man.
now no longer have to worry. That's one of the things I'm glad they changed.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good QOL change.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to give the hairpin to Thomas. He'll be all right. He doesn't need to know.
Pink Blood, why do you have to call me out like that?
Franz the Lab workshop and commentary for a 13-year-old game he's played 3,000 times. That nobody would blame him if he was just like, video games are good. Anyway, let's talk
Pink
about
Blood,
something
why are
else.
you looking in my window when I'm recording my live or my post commentary? What are you doing?
Yeah, if we do Stonefang, we'll be able to get we can start upgrading the Falchion a little bit, which should help us just kind of walk on through Shrine of Storms and not worry about it too much.
Yeah,
Because those things are pretty resistant to magic. Well, they're not resistant to fire; they're resistant to magic specifically. So
stuff in the Shrine of Storms is pretty weak against fire. Yeah, there's a fire longsword down on the second level of Stonefang in 2-2.
oh yeah, there is. Yeah.
And that's really handy in the Shrine of Storms because fire damage in this game, for some bizarre reason, I guess they just didn't think very carefully about this when they designed it, but I think it's fantastic because it makes fire weapons more unique. Fire damage will cause enemies to stagger, and I mean like really stagger.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can stunlock things completely to death with fire damage in this game.
Which is fine by me. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'll be back. Wait right there. Actually, this is fine. I need to get all this crap down here anyway.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of stuff down here, a bunch of upgrade materials.
You know, I was going to bring up something about... We were talking about Dark 2, and now I can't remember. There was something else that was weird about that I was going to bring up, and now I cannot remember what it was. Oh, well.
Well, when it comes back, let me know. I'm sure we can work with it. Kildred, the Epee Rapier has higher stat requirements, and it doesn't actually have as much base fire damage. So you need to make a stat investment for it to be equal to a standard fire upgrade weapon. And the advantage to fire weapons is that they have really low stat requirements and 0 scaling. They rely entirely on base damage, so they're really good if you don't want to invest any stats into them at all.
Yeah, which has been the case for... That was Demons and Dark that were like that. That was actually one of my favorite things about Dark 1 was the elemental weapon builds. I always thought that was really interesting to be able to actually invest time and effort and upgrade materials into a weapon instead of your actual levels, because you're still in... That's one thing I think that gets like kind of lost is, you know, it's like, oh, it's cheesy because you can upgrade that to 15 and, you know, pump your vitality and endurance. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you can, but it's not like the currency that you're spending is any different than you would normally use for leveling up. You're still using a relatively considerable amount of souls, and in addition to that, you're also using upgrade materials that can be relatively hard to come by, like early game. So I always thought that was interesting, and it was kind of a neat way to reward the player with some like grinding and whatnot. You know, you could create a build that wasn't necessarily dependent on level, but it was more dependent on you know, the level of investment you put in via souls and materials to create a weapon that was really good. So
yeah, which gave you the advantage that you could have a low-level character that was suitable for online co-op because you had a weapon that was more appropriate for a later game area. It's really unfortunate that FromSoft tried to do away with that, and they've more or less succeeded because it was the builds that relied on weapons with high base damage rather than any scaling made playing through the game at low levels viable. And in every new game, FromSoft has eroded the viability of low-level builds and basically forced you to level up in order just to meet the usage requirements for most weapons, never mind to actually get a decent amount of damage out of them. And they've pretty much destroyed the viability of high base damage weapons with no scaling, starting really in Dark Souls 2 and more than ever in Dark Souls 3. So it's unfortunate. It's just because it was a perfectly viable alternative way of building your character that there was no reason for them to get rid of.
yeah,
But I guess for whatever reason they decided that no, we want people to level up and we want to force them to level up. So we're going to take away all the tools they had that let them avoid doing so.
yeah. And I wonder if that's like a direct, if that's, I mean, and I'm sure it is directly related to what we were talking about earlier about how, you know, he stated that he never really went back and revisited the older games. So I wonder if that's, you know, one of those things where you just, and again, I get what they're saying, and like I understand Miyazaki's take on that, but at the same time, I feel like it's, you know, it's definitely his art form, so to speak, which nobody should tell him how to do it or anything like that. But I do feel like reflecting on, especially when it comes to a group designed piece of media like a video game, that it is probably a good idea to reflect on some of the older ones to see where your improvement could lie, because like we said earlier, the issue is that like there were things that worked that then got removed, or things that didn't work that never got fixed. And you know, if you're not reflecting on your prior projects, at least, I'm not, you know, don't dwell on it, but at least like taking kind of a cursory look at it and saying, okay, you know, co-op in this was terrible, we should probably fix co-op this next go around to make it a little bit more stable. And they obviously did that with some things, but that was maybe other people other than him who decided to implement, you know, better networking features or whatever it may be. So that's just it's just really odd, I guess, that you wouldn't want to reflect more on your prior art, I guess, to try to see where you can improve.
Well, I get the impression that a lot of that just comes from fear, and fear is your worst enemy when you're an artist. I mean, it's your worst enemy no matter who you are, really, it can be, but for an artist, fear is what causes you to stagnate, right? Fear of doing anything other than what you know, fear of having to face criticism, you know, fear of stepping outside your comfort zone. It just leads you to do the same thing over and over because that's what you know and that's what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what we see from FromSoft is they do over and over again more or less the same things, and they'll randomly switch out a system here and there or randomly make a change, but they're not doing it purposefully on the basis of reflection on prior mistakes or prior things that worked well. They're just doing it in a self-contained, almost in a vacuum. So yeah, I think there's a lot to that they their motivation is a very overt desire to deliberately not receive feedback while also not being willing to do their own reflection on their past products.
Yeah. And Pink Blood was talking about something interesting here, because he says, shout out to Swery for saying he and his games don't need criticism, and then putting out trash fire like DP2, which it is. I'll never forget the first like, because that came out right around like the peak of COVID in 2020, and I was actually recovering from being sick, and so I was like delusional, but I was playing that damn game, and I love Deadly Prem 1 for all of its weird, janky kind of Twin Peaks-esque feel, but then at the same time it's a genuine game that has a lot of heart, despite the fact that it kind of plays like shit, you know. So
yeah, it's a meme for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, but it's actually a pretty damn good game in a lot of ways. Like, it's obviously not fantastic, but it's got some cool stuff going on, and it drives me nuts that DP2 was absolutely terrible. I mean, like, and I was willing to put up with a lot of trash, and yeah, DP2 was just not great. So which is
I saw all the reviews of it, and I saw some gameplay footage of it, and yeah, that is the kind of product you get from someone who thinks they don't need criticism.
Yeah, that is true. I'm
feedback.
trying to think if I should take protection and water veil for armored spider, because I'm afraid I might get hit by the flame, which would be good.
You can't use both at the same time.
No,
I
know. I figured
I
figured I'd shift over to the other one once we got to him, because I'm definitely gonna need protection against armored spider, because we are not very tanky right now, just in case I get hit.
If you're going to be going for a melee strategy, you might as well just bring protection, because the fireballs, you're going to dodge a couple of them on the way in, but once you're in, it's just the fire breath, and you'll have plenty of warning.
Yeah, we'll stick with that, because you just need to run away for the fire breath, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and you get a long wind up on it.
Just hoof it.
Yeah.
EP2 felt like a game that wanted to be so bad it's good and just ended up being so bad. See, I wondered that myself, if it was intended to, like, at first I was like, did they just like screw this game up intentionally? Like, it definitely had a feeling like that, but thankfully, or rather not thankfully, but it does appear that it was just a botched effort. Like, there was nothing that indicated that was a intentionally, we're gonna make this a poor game in general, just for the sake of it. That definitely did not seem to be the case. So,
well, no, they definitely didn't intend that, because Swery, I didn't hear about the bit where he said he didn't need criticism or feedback on Deadly Premonition 2, but it's all the more ironic to me to hear that he said that, because he ended up swallowing those words big time when they dead named a transgender character in Deadly Premonition 2, and the game went to retail that way. And he got lambasted by the community, and understandably so, I guess.
Yeah, man, I remember that, and it was...
And then he went on social media and then made the statement publicly that, no, we are going to fix this. We want to make sure we get this right, and we've listened to your feedback. It's like, oh, you did you?
And it's like, I mean, y'all didn't get the game. I mean, the game is terrible. Like, I hate saying that, because again, I'm a big fan of Deadly Prem, like, just as a game in general. I think it's wonderful. It sucks, but it's wonderful. Like, there's not a lot of games that are like that are genuinely crappy, but like just so organically fun and stupid, and like they're very true to whatever the form is that the person was trying to convey. And there's just not a lot of games like that. So I like DP a lot.
No, and I feel like a lot of the ones that are like that by accident.
Yeah.
Or by coincidence.
No, that's true. Yeah. It just kind of happens, which I'm convinced that it was. I about had a panic attack because I couldn't remember if I had like a fire weapon on or something before I whacked those barrels, and I was like, it's all over here. Saw my life flash before my eyes. Yeah, I don't know. I hate that was such a poor quality game, and even the story and everything is just ludicrous. Like, not to say that the first one isn't. That one's ludicrous in a fun way. This one's ludicrous in like a, I can't believe you've done this type way. Where it's just ridiculous. So
yeah, and it's something you see commonly in sequels. It seems to me that we achieved great success with the first game. How do we replicate that success in the second game? And then they get so focused on replicating prior achievements that they forget that one of the things that made the first game so popular was that it was new and it was not beholden to a prior IP.
Yeah.
And that, in my view, is why Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1 are both generally regarded as good games, and why they're my two favorite games in the Souls series. Because Dark Souls 1 was not a sequel to Demon's Souls. They were, technically they were in the same general franchise, but they were two completely different stories in two completely different worlds. And Dark Souls did not depend on having a whole bunch of pre-written lore from Demon's Souls fit into it somehow.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, and obviously, I've always kind of viewed Dark Souls as like, because obviously Demon's Souls did not do very well. That was not a
not initially.
No, and not initially. It was not a very popular game. And I even remember the first time I played Demons shortly after it came out. A buddy of mine had recommended it to me. I actually didn't even like it at first. Granted, I was playing it at a friend's house, right? So I'm not. I don't have the time to really sit down and super invest into it. But yeah, even going through the first area, I was like, God, I kind of hate this. But it was at the same time where again, there were a lot of graphical advancements and stuff, and when you're looking at Demons as a graphical marvel, I mean, yeah, it ain't much anything really, but got some cool visuals, but it's obviously not state of the art even at the time. It almost felt PS2-ish in a lot of ways, not in the super, not in like a defamatory sense. It's more of a, it just did. It felt like a very late gen PS2 game that was afforded more like higher resolution and, you know, little perks here and there. So.
Well, I don't know if you've seen any of the early, the early artwork from Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls was originally supposed to be a totally different game. I believe, in fact, it was supposed to be King's Field 5.
Thank God it wasn't.
There are some cut assets from it there where there's like a completely different UI and different menu assets and things where it was going to be a very different game. And Miyazaki basically salvaged it off the cutting room floor. And since there were so few expectations on him and no one thought that he would actually be able to make anything out of it, they said, yeah, do whatever the hell you want. Have fun. Let us know when you're done and we'll release it. And this is what he produced.
Well,
whereas,
I think, yeah, and with Kingsfield, I mean, have you ever played Kingsfield 4?
Not directly, but I've watched people do Let's Plays of it or little excerpts of it.
Yeah, 1 through 3 are pretty good, and the short time I've gotten to play with those, you can generally get the gist of those games. I would say I've spent about maybe 6 hours in all of them total, which I feel like is a good measure of like how is this going. Kingsfield 4 is terrible. I mean, it is such a frustrating. They're frustrating games in general, but like the first 3. They're not quite as bad because while they do have that old gaminess going on, they're just not quite as suffering as Kingsfield 4. It feels like Kingsfield 4 is just like the worst slog to get through, and everything is just out to make it as miserable as possible. So,
which just goes to show you that Miyazaki was proudly ignoring feedback long before the Souls series.
Yeah, he made the right decision there for sure. I don't think anybody needed. But nowadays, people would probably revel in a Kingsfield 5 because nowadays in the whole YouTube era where people cover a bunch of, you know, out there games that they maybe would have never heard of before. You know, you can take a look at stuff like Kingsfield. Now there's probably some type of, you know, maybe like fondness for it, even though it's something they maybe never played in the first place or didn't have to deal with. And so now they're like,
people would revel in a Kingsfield 5, but the only reason they would is because it would be piggybacking on the popularity that its successor series gained.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And the only content creators covering it would be people in the Souls community doing it as a retrospective.
Yep.
Because that's pretty much the only people who are covering Kingsfield now.
Well, most of FromSoft's games, and I know the Armored Core lovers are going to go nuts, but and I like Armored Core to an extent. But like FromSoft's games were not exactly critically acclaimed in any capacity before Demons or Dark Souls, not to the level they are now. I mean, it's unreal.
Well, not at all, really. I mean,
Yeah.
they were a bunch of wonky products of their time for the most part.
And I actually personally, like, as much as I love like mech stuff and all that, I think Armored Core is, and this is even playing them back then, I think it's kind of a miserable experience. Like, it's cool and I can appreciate a lot of it, but I had a friend who was really into it as well, so I tried to, you know, hang with him in that regard, and I could just never get into it at the same level he did. It's just I don't know. Some of those games, they're so system heavy, and I feel like they don't really have a ton going on aside from like some gameplay elements in the systems to where it ends up just kind of falling flat for me. But I don't know.
I can appreciate that.
I would love to see them, because every time it gets brought up, it's like, well, what about a new Armored Core? I was like, well, I would be interested to see with the large budget what they would do with that, because, you know, that level of customization and speed of gameplay would probably be pretty difficult to pull off in a big budget fashion, because Armored Core was not exactly known for its like super detailed world or anything like that, right? Like that was obviously not the intended kind of take from that, and
No,
that's
not
okay.
at all. It was just, hey, we're Japanese, we love big mechs just as much as anybody else. Let's make a big mech game with, you know, a Japanese mech style plot, right?
Yeah.
We watched Gundam when we were kids.
Yeah. It is cool. I don't want you guys to think I don't like Armored Core. I actually think Armored Core is pretty cool. I just, again, I don't know. It was just never quite like stuck with me, because it just felt, I don't know, like it felt like I was kind of doing the same deal over and over and over again. Which is fine. Games have loops. That's okay. That's not a bad thing
And Laura,
necessarily.
I'm not saying there's a problem with it. I'm just saying that Armored Core was never intended to be this.
Well, were you a big fan of Armored Core?
I never played it. Like I said, I'm not really into mech games, and I never really even watched too many. Like, I didn't watch Transformers as a kid because I was always more interested in like the Sonic the Hedgehog Saturday morning cartoons. So
I thought you were about to
not
say like
really.
Japanese stuff after your trip to the Japanese restaurant. Like,
Oh no! I mean,
you're like, no,
I
it was
mean,
only katanas for me.
I took as much of an interest in the actual culture of the country as anybody would who was just learning about it for the first time at the age of 16.
Yeah.
Which is to say, it didn't kind of register to me at that point that, oh yeah, the food I'm eating at this restaurant is from the same country that makes the video games I've been playing. Because as a kid, you know, there weren't really a lot of Western games that you could play on consoles. Everything that was console came from Japan, or almost everything.
Yeah.
And everything that was on PC came from the West. And it was a much more clear-cut divide back then, and it still to some extent is today, because PC gaming has never really taken off in Japan. But back in the day, if you were going to play games on a console, you had the option of either a Nintendo console, or, I mean, I guess Sega, you could originally call them an American company, but they got bought out by Sammy eventually, and they became a Japanese company anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the PC gaming and console thing is interesting too, because I think for folks who are a bit younger, unless you've taken a big dive into like the retro PC gaming hole.
Jammy, the Tony Hawk games were later. We're talking like the PS1 era for Tony Hawk. I'm talking NES era.
Yeah, Fresno's talking about like Doom era stuff, but what does that look like between like PC gaming then and console gaming for like the early 90s, which is a completely different world, because you had the Dooms out there, you had a couple like shooters and stuff like that. RTSs were relatively popular in the early to mid 90s, and those did not exist on console until Star Fox 64. God almighty, what a mistake that was. But there was, and I owned it because I was stupid. But
I played it at a demo kiosk at a Toys R Us, and I was like, "What even is this?"
It was a nightmare. I probably enjoyed it when I was younger because it was a way I could play StarCraft on my N64. But you look at stuff like that, and I think it is really interesting to see kind of how different PC gaming and console gaming was. And nowadays most things that come out on consoles are probably going to come out on PC or vice versa. But in that specific instance, yeah, he's right. It was extremely different climate. Like, if you're going to be playing like any Japanese games, like, I mean, those were all console. Like that didn't come out. None of those came out to PC. Like, nothing that I can think of anyway from back then. Are there any Japanese games from that era that?
No crossover, very little, if any.
Yeah, nothing of note that I can think of, like off the top of my head, that would have been like a Japanese game from the early 90s that didn't land on like a Super Nintendo or PlayStation or Sega or whatever before, if ever coming to the computer like gaming scene was like, I mean, sometimes if we wanted to do any of that stuff, it would be like the ridiculous like IDOS port of like Final Fantasy VII in like 1997, 98, whenever that was. That was about the best you got if you wanted to try to play like something that was a prominent console game on PC.
And that port was it met with a lot of mixed reception at the time because of the way the music was compressed, and
it was awful. It was all MIDIs. Yeah, they didn't use the PlayStation because they had actual recorded sound files for it, because of course the PlayStation did CD quality audio and all that stuff. So they just didn't use that, which was really, really, really weird. And I, to this day, am not sure exactly why they did that. I'm sure somebody's probably covered it online.
My understanding is that it came down to internal politics and Japanese game developers not understanding developing on PC because they're only used to developing for consoles, and later on handheld, as of like the DS and even the Game Boy. Really, the Game Boy was the original handheld for by modern standards.
Oh, completely. Yeah, that I mean, the Game Boy basically defined everything. Like, and there really hasn't been and I know as much as I love the PSP and the Vita, and I think they were wonderful pieces of hardware, they ended up getting used for things that weren't even Sony's games pretty much through and through in the homebrew scene. There hasn't been a handheld gaming console that's really ever competed with Nintendo's line to any large extent, because I mean, there was just no way that I don't know what it was about Sony, but every time they tried, it seems like they were so focused on the hardware and everything that they just didn't give a shit about the games, which is very strange because that's kind of the hallmark of a handheld. But
It is, and that's why Nintendo was able to coast for so long by doing, once again, the same thing they'd always done over and over again. Every quote-unquote new iteration was really just the same thing with slightly more advanced technology and a shinier case.
yeah,
But that worked for them for decades because they had cornered their market. They knew what people wanted, they knew what was popular, and they had pretty much a monopoly on even on third-party game contracts.
mm-hmm.
And that they knew that in order to keep people coming back, they had to make sure all the good games were on Nintendo consoles, and that's what they did
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of how the whole thing panned out because like PC gaming is probably more prominent than it's ever been. You see more and more people building their own machines because it's a lot easier than it used to be. Part of
And
it.
it's less expensive. I mean, maybe not now with the prices kind of swinging the other direction, but yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, my father worked at a manufacturing company, and he was a quality assurance manager there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him telling me on occasion that the bosses, that they were two brothers who ran the company, and they would get new computers for the offices, and we're talking like 1990, 1991, a brand new computer that had 64 megabytes of RAM at
Yeah.
that time, right, was $3,500, and that's $3,500 in 1991 money.
Oh yeah, which is it's obscene. Like they were so expensive. And another thing, like even when I was working in, we might be taking a beating here in a second. Even back when I was working in like retail and some stuff like that, I hate this fight so much. Anyway, no, but me and my buddy, when I was working retail and stuff, he that was kind of when I got into like building computers and stuff like that. Was around the time I was working that job, and he introduced me to a lot of it. And the like parts even back then, this is like 2006, 2007. I mean, a tremendous pain in the ass to just get things to line up sometimes. Like, there was no PC part picker, there was no whatever. You're not going to see that kind of stuff. So I think he's doing
Yeah, and then you had to worry about the lack of universal parts because for a long time, anything that would work on an IBM or a Windows machine, a Microsoft machine, totally incompatible with that. And I mean, to some degree, that's still the case, obviously, but back then, it was even worse. And the proprietary shit that Apple was doing in those days was egregious.
Oh, yeah, it was awful.
And, I mean, computers weren't useful for as many applications back then as they are today, because they just didn't have the power. And then sometimes you'd have to jury-rig this enormously complicated system just to get basic functionality. Like, even then, sometimes just the technology itself would be unreliable. You remember SCSI?
Oh, SCSI?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, well, enough said, right? I remember having my father come home some nights, and he would just whine and complain about how he'd spent all day with the QA team trying to do what he called SCSI voodoo.
I believe it, yeah.
Which was, okay, how do we connect this SCSI connector in exactly the right way to get the computer to recognize this device and then not have it get disconnected halfway through a data transfer?
Yeah. Oh, it's
Like,
awful.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just one example, but that's way back in the day. We were working with much more rudimentary technology, and Game Boy, in fact, was it was an invention that came about because the guy who created it, Gunpei Yokoi was his name, and his was a very unfortunate fate. He died a very tragic death in a car accident when he pulled over to try to help somebody, and then some dipshit who wasn't looking where they were going hit him. But
God, really? I did not know that.
yeah, Gunpei
How shitty
Yokoi,
is that, man? That's terrible.
father of the Game Boy. Yes, he went out in a very unfortunate and heartbreaking way. But he he went on record in an interview years and years ago as having designed the Game Boy to expressly be a low-cost alternative to the more expensive consoles out there. And he got the idea from a calculator where he was looking at the dot matrix screen on a calculator and he thought, wait a minute, what if I were to use this to make a handheld video game system?
Yeah.
And I mean, it turned out to be a brilliant idea, and it was wildly popular.
Oh yeah, unbelievably. I think damn near everybody had a Game Boy. I mean, that was so common.
My aunt and uncle got one for me for my birthday, and it was brilliant because I don't know if you remember the specifics, but back in the day, an NES, brand new in the box, was $150. And we're talking, again, 1985, 1990. $150 in 1990 money is, I mean, it might even work out to be more than a modern console costs today. I don't know the exact inflation rate or how it stacks up, but it's at least comparable, right? It was a huge amount of money at the time to be spending on something like that. In comparison, the Game Boy was $80.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were able to corner a market of parents who were not willing to spend $150, but who were willing to spend $80, and the games were cheaper for Game Boy as well. And it was portable, so you could give it to your kid during a 5-hour car ride to shut them up, and it would.
Right.
I mean, it did for me.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it worked for all of it. I mean, I had, what was it, the DG100? I can't remember what the model number of that one was. I think it's DG100. It was like the original, like, gray Game Boy or whatever. And
yep, that's what I had, the brick.
Yep, and then I had a Game Boy Pocket after that. I think I played, because I remember playing Pokemon Red on my original Game Boy, and then I got a Game Boy Pocket later, which was just I remember loving the Game Boy Pocket because it had it didn't have the green screen anymore, right? So it was just like a traditional, because it was gray, I think at that point, like a gray LCD or whatever it was, but...
Yep, and then the Game Boy Color came out that had, I think, color palettes you could select.
It did,
like
because for older games, like for games that were non-compatible, you could select individual color palette. Like, it's kind of nuts when you think about like the difference in, I talk about this sometimes about our age group and this generation specifically is very unique because I feel like we have probably seen and I mean to an extent like the Gen X and stuff like that has also seen it. It's more of we grew up in an interesting
with it.
Yeah, it's like an interesting time period where we went from cassettes and vinyl and stuff like that people were still using here and there and VHS tapes, and now we're all the way up to streaming services and things like that. So we've definitely gotten to see the wide breadth of it's just the wide breadth of technology. So it's crazy to think about like what we were looking at when we were kids, and then kind of like look at what we're doing now. We're talking over the internet on a phone call with playing a game, talking about it, and then sharing that video feed to people.
Yeah.
So the idea of that when we were younger was probably ridiculous, right?
If you had tried to describe to me when I was 7 what I would be doing in 30 years, I would have laughed in your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it was an unimaginable fantasy. But you're right. Our generation straddles a really weird line between two different, like wildly different eras.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a weird place to be in, to be honest. Because I remember a time when the internet, as we know it today, did not exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your home was a privilege for wealthy people.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, there wasn't an awful lot you could do with it other than just basic word processing. Like, you remember those printers that had printer paper with the holes on either sides that were perforated that you had to remove?
Would you believe me if I told you that those were still in play when I was working in IT in some areas?
I'm not surprised to hear it.
Oh, we also serviced AS400s, which were also a
nice
piece of equipment that should have died years ago. And because I used to do technical document writing for a company that used AS400s, and when I saw that son of a bitch, when I started that last job I had, I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. I was like, not again. I don't want to do this.
Is that why you got out of IT? Is that why you left? Because you ran into one too many of those?
We all hated the AS400. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild to have to, work on something like that, especially in modern day. But
Sass on Wheels asks you, Nick, and you're going to have to answer this because I only have a vague concept, but what is the AS400? I
mean, effectively, the gist of it that you need to know is that it was an old style, like... So you would see modern day like databases and things like that exist. The AS400 would take care of tasks like A lot of hospitals would utilize them for like data entry, collection, database management, all kinds of stuff like that. So effectively, instead of having something like something you could access with like a nice like GUI or whatever, you would be doing a lot of like command line style stuff with it, and it was effectively a way to keep like records and stuff like that. Was what you saw a lot. So yeah, I would say like because typically in our case anyway, I would see a lot of implementation of AS400s in hospitals. There's some like law firms that use them. I mean, they weren't actually a bad piece of technology. However, when it's like 2000 at this point, like 2014, 2015, whenever I was working my last job, they were archaic at that point. Now they're super archaic, and hopefully they've been phased out of existence by now. But it's definitely not fun to work on, especially after you've kind of moved on to everything being a GUI based platform or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as technology has improved over the years, in some ways, there've been some sacrifices. Like thinking back to the original Game Boy. Nick, remember when we hung out that one time we met up in New York City?
Mm-hmm.
Well, remember I took you to the Nintendo store?
Oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, well, remember what they had at the Nintendo store, among other things, was they had a display case in which there was a Game Boy that had survived an IED blast in Iraq and was still functional.
Oh yeah. Yep, that was awesome. I mean, that was I think I still have the picture of that. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can find it online. Yeah, it was a Game Boy that took an explosive and still works. I think it actually had something still playing on it in the store, which was incredible.
It did, yeah. They were running Tetris on it, I think, and that right there is the epitome of they don't make that shit like they used to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was nuts. Like,
yeah.
These are AS400s were apparently discontinued in 2013. I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that they were properly discontinued at that point, but
well, good riddance, it sounds like.
God almighty. Yeah, honestly, like the only reason they were miserable to work on was again because they were much more powerful and user-friendly solutions than much more powerful solutions than this. So that was very frustrating to use. But migration from AS400 to modern platforms was basically a task on its own. Most of the time we would actually have an independent team that would do migration from AS400 to more modern platforms. So because it was its own thing. Like, I mean, you couldn't, that's not something you could just throw like a random technician at and say, okay, let's migrate all these databases and everything off of this AS400 onto a new platform. It wasn't as simple as that, unfortunately. But
it sounds like you needed specific expertise with that particular platform with the AS400, yeah?
Yeah, and I think that was probably part of the big issue was, like, none of us were really specifically trained on it. It was something that we had to kind of deal with, like, as it came up. And it was always such a pain in the butt to do that because you're just like, I don't want to mess with this thing. This thing sucks. It's not fun. Like, I don't feel like... Because the other problem, especially when you work in IT or any type of industry where your knowledge needs to stay... fluid and adaptive and all that stuff, because if you worked IT in the 90s and you try to get a job now, it's a whole different ballgame because everything's changed so much. So it has to stay fluid, and it feels miserable to have to learn something for your current job that is archaic and old, and you're just going to have to deal with it for the time being because it's not knowledge that's going to catapult you forward in any way, because in any modern system it's not going to be applicable. Like there's no way in hell that's going to help you on like modern style systems and servicing them or answering questions or anything like that. So you really feel like you're doing effectively a bunch of dead end work on it, and it just feels absolutely terrible.
I can relate to that from more or less the same standpoint from a completely different career. Yeah, when I was in college studying occupational therapy, we were being taught occupational therapy techniques and methodologies and modalities from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that going, these are not applicable to what I'm going to be expected to be able to do in, 2010, which was around the time that I was studying. And I ended up abandoning the program for a whole number of reasons, but that was one of them. It was just, no, what am I getting all this training for in stuff that I'll never use, that OTs haven't done for decades? Like, why? Why bother?
Yeah. Oh, completely. It does. It just feels so bad. And any type of dead end road, especially when it comes to a career like that, is just miserable. And also, Steak was saying he found the sweary tweet, which is also probably what this is, where he did say, important note, I never need any feedback from anybody. I will walk my way. Thanks. Love you all. Well, well, good thing you're not taking it, because Deadly Prem sucked.
And later on, the tweet from him apologizing for having made a fairly serious mistake that lots of people were angry about, and saying, "We'll fix it. We've received your feedback."
Yeah, God. I never worked IT for hospitals directly. I actually... No, yeah, I did. I guess there were a few. Yeah, because there were a few hospital like based clients, or medical rather, I should say, because I don't know if any of them were like major hospitals. But no, I've never heard of Muse. I've heard of plenty proprietary software out there, and some of them would probably make me jump out my window, even though it's only a first floor window, which means I'll just be inconvenienced. But the point is, yeah, no, it's like. Some of those, that is the worst when it comes to IT, is working with proprietary stuff. If you're working with like, you know, anything in Microsoft Suite, whether it's like SQL or like, you know, anything like that, like that's fine, because you feel like it's going somewhere. Or I'm sorry, not SQL, like utilizing like any like type of management stuff. Like if you're using like any of Microsoft's like suites to manage those things, like document creation, Excel, like anything like that, you feel like at least it's an industry standard that you can actually like wrap your brain around and say, okay, this is going to be like what it is going forward. And thankfully, like you did, again, dead end road. But proprietary stuff is just, hey, let's hate existence and work on this piece of shit that like obviously even the company doesn't want to support, but I've got to figure it out. And you guys obviously don't know. So great. You know,
And they don't want to spend the money upgrading to a more standardized system, is what it usually seems to boil down to.
Yeah, which is really odd, because most of them are willing to pay the IT like management that they have, whether like especially if it's third party, they're willing to pay them, you know, thousands of dollars a year, when realistically they could have just spent that money on yeah, it's could have just spent that money on upgrading everything and not having to worry about it as much. But I've got plenty of rants on that I could make, because there were a few clients that were extremely resistant to ever either contract us or anything like that, and then would basically just end up paying thousands of dollars every single year on our services, when they could have just gotten us contracted for way less and then had us available all year, but they just wouldn't. So who knows?
Resistance to change.
Yep. Oh man, I guess let's go ahead and do try to do Flame Lurker. I think I guess I need to go back and get a Watery Veil or whatever, because that is gonna be very...
Yeah. Well, I mean, his attacks do combine physical and fire damage. So if you're worried about the AoEs, you'll want Water Veil. If you're worried about the punches, protection is probably okay.
Yeah, I think last time when we were lower vid, I think I used a Water Veil, because that was... I just think it helps, because the explosion's a little bit easier to get clipped by, I think, than his standard melee stuff. Because I don't know if you can get him caught on geometry in this one, because I messed around with it, but...
You can. Geometry has changed a little bit, but you can still get him stuck.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out last time. Muse's P2P cardiology information system developed by GE. Hey, Sasha, what's up, buddy? Hi to everybody that's joined us tonight. Once again, we are joined, of course, by our good buddy Franz. He is also known as a German spy. He streams on Twitch periodically. He hasn't lately, but he will be getting back to that at some point here soon.
Hello, everyone.
So you should definitely follow him and keep an eye on that for whenever he does the do. You can also track down his YouTube channel from there, too. He's got his links up and stuff, I believe. So,
Oh, geez. Thanks, Nick.
and if you guys were late to this and you want to catch the VOD, I will have this up on the main YouTube channel, not the VOD channel, much like the D&D thing. So you can go subscribe there and keep an eye on that if you want to catch the rollback on this on YouTube and not Twitch, because let's be real, Twitch's video player is god-awful. So, absolutely terrible. No, it's awful. It's so bad. Do we also donate and sub to him? You should. Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. Def. Do it.
You guys, thank you. I appreciate the support, genuinely. Don't get me wrong, I am happy just to have people show up. I'm very happy for just that. And I should forewarn everyone, I am working on a very big side project at the moment. And I say side project, but it's really kind of a main project, because it's taking up all of my spare time, and I have not been able to stream regularly for a fair while, and I probably won't for a fair while yet. So once I do resume regular streams, that will happen, but it won't be for some time. So
Sounds
just
like they
when-
have a big backlog of stuff to go watch then, because you have a monster of a Demon Souls playthrough, I think, that you did for this specifically. And this,
on YouTube for
Yes.
this game, yeah.
and this man knows Demon Souls back, front, and center. He knows it all, so definitely say if you're super interested in the game, go check that out, because he is very proficient in his knowledge. What this man knows, he knows.
I can some details sometimes, but I appreciate the vote of confidence, Nick. Thank you.
Like, I mean, it's everybody's got their niche. I'll let you know when I find mine.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know at the same time. Maybe I'll find mine the same time you find yours.
I think you found yours a while ago. I think you got that one under control.
I mean, to some extent, maybe, but I feel like I'm the one who's I'm bouncing back and forth between completely different professions and projects. You, at least, you've got some consistency.
That's what I got. If anything, I'm consistent, I suppose, dude. Wireless controller battery is low. Unbelievable.
In person I know, you're the only one who can manage a regular streaming schedule practically. I don't know how you do that.
Well, that's actually interesting, because I don't think I've ever, like, I don't know, I guess maybe, you ever, like, I find that just as people in general, we have a hard time sometimes ever taking a look at maybe even the things that we do that might be difficult for some other people to do. Because, like, you always compare yourself to others in some way, and, and a lot of that is to strive to do better, and not necessarily to compare in a negative way, but like, oh, well, that's really cool that they can do that, and maybe I'd love to do that too. Or see what I could do with that, or whatever it may be. And but sometimes I think we can really undersell ourselves on what maybe we bring to the table or whatever, because it's something that we do consistently. Like, I find that, like, with you, for example, you do a very good job of remaining eloquent while also trying to explain stuff, in depth, and it comes across as you being very knowledgeable, and you got something to say about it, and you're going to probably be informed as you walk away from that conversation if someone's listening to you. So that's something that you're good at, is you can really articulate very well on stuff like that. And that's something that I'm sure other people wished that they could maybe do a little bit better, right? Like they wish they could maybe articulate their thoughts like that, kind of in a formulaic nature or whatever. But
It's kind of you to make that observation, but sometimes I wonder how much appreciation there really is for that kind of thing these days. One of the things that I've noticed over the course of my work on strategy guides for both the Souls series and for a couple of other games I've worked on guides for, but it's all been with the same company, is that it seems like there's just less and less emphasis on learning words and how to string them together into a coherent sentence. And that's not even people's fault who suffer from that lack of learning in schools. It seems to come back to there's just less emphasis on learning how to write and to communicate. And because it's being less emphasized, people are being deprived of the ability to learn it. And, at the same time, I wonder, well, if people are placing less emphasis on it, is it because it's less important to people than it used to be? Is there some other reason? I don't know. So I feel like I'm sitting here with an increasingly outdated set of skills when it comes to communication.
No, I don't think so. And we kind of briefly touched on it the other night, like when we were talking, that I actually think that the style of kind of how you approach, especially like your content and things like that, that style of like kind of long form approach has actually become more popular, I think, in recent years than it was before. I think that people value like video essay style formatting on YouTube has become extremely popular, which is hilarious because you and I were talking about how when we were still doing a lot of like Let's Play stuff, because mine used to be a lot longer too, I guess because I had a lot to say or whatever it may be, that we were trying to shorten things, and it's hilarious that in a weird kind of roundabout way, it seems like it's kind of come back around where people prefer the longer video styles. So I think that's really interesting.
I've been off of YouTube for so long that I couldn't even. I've not had my finger on the pulse of what's popular on YouTube in terms of formatting or content style. I'd have to take your word for that.
Yeah, like I would say like video essay style stuff has become pretty popular, but that also is a little bit different than just like a standard Let's Play thing. But I mean, really, when you look back at it, I don't know if you remember this, but a really funny joke that someone else brought up in chat, and I'm so glad that somebody remembered it. Do you remember when we went with Eli on one of his many Dark Souls playthroughs and we ruined it?
We ruined everything we were ever involved in that he did. You've got to be more specific, man.
So for anybody who doesn't know, anytime we went to go do basically anything, anything we did with Eli, there would always be a multitude of comments that were just like, "Who are these assholes? I hate them. Hope they die." Like, this is the most just awful. Like, fuck these people. Whatever. Like, it was such a shitty whatever. It was just so funny every time too, because it would always happen without fail, and it was always a nice wide breadth of like different insults for both of us, which was really cool. So it was always really funny.
I appreciated that at least they made the effort to tailor the insults to the individual.
They did, yeah, for the most part. Yeah, they tried to tailor it. I think I was typically loud and obnoxious. You like wouldn't shut up or something like that. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a surprise to hear that any long form content now has gained any popularity. Although I suppose when you look at it in the context of the pandemic, I can kind of understand why maybe there would be more of a demand for podcast or radio style content that you can put on in the background while you're working from home. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure. I think it's just a matter of, people. Before I go into that, does the thief ring cause him to break aggro if you get far enough away? I can't remember.
Yes, it does. The thief ring does work on him, and it can be a benefit or a hindrance depending on how you use it. But it's your call.
Yeah, I can't remember if he was affected by that. I think some enemies are and some aren't. Like, it's kind of wonky, but
some bosses are and some aren't. But Flame Lurker is, yes.
Yep.
Oh. The fight that the thief ring can genuinely break is the man eaters.
Because I think that actually might have happened to us because one will just fly away indefinitely, if I remember correctly.
And back, and it'll get so far away that you can't re-aggro it, and you'll have to restart the fight. Yeah,
it's so ridiculous. Like, what a silly thing that is, but I guess there you go.
Will not fix.
All right, let's see if we can do old Flame Lurky, because if we can get this done, we can upgrade the Crescent Falchion a good bit and go back and do Shrine of Storms. Y'all remember Bacon Man? How would I ever forget? How would I ever forget?
I still have the specs for that build, actually. That was
do you?
Yep.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, because I remember we did the stupid pitchfork thing and...
Yeah, the fork in one hand and the knife in the other, and then Smo's armor with the Fangbore helm.
Right.
Yes. That was...
Fangbore helm. It's just so ridiculous. Like, what a silly thing that was.
I mean, it's really the closest thing Dark Souls 1 has to this game's, what do you call it, Monk's head wrappings.
Yeah.
Because the equivalent of the Monk's head wrappings in Dark Souls 1 was just lame, and nobody cared about them, and they weren't memorable.
Oh, you're talking about what's-his-face's robes or whatever?
Yeah, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I guess if they were memorable in any way, it was just, I guess, where you acquired them in the Painted World, which... How do you feel about the Painted World? Because I feel like as time went on... I liked it initially, and I don't know if I really dig the Painted World anymore. Like,
well, it doesn't really fit the rest of the game, aesthetically or thematically, and that's why they decided to make it its own separate world in a painting. Originally, it was a demo area where you would fight Gravelord Nito. That was in very, very early preview builds of the game.
Right.
And they eventually just said, nah, you know what? There's really no place in the actual world where this fits, but what if we could find a way to make it fit some other way? And, so they settled upon, well, what if it were a completely separate dimension that you go into by getting dragged into a painting? And I think that was probably the right decision.
Probably, yeah.
How different it is from the rest of the game, Because it's a little bit easier to accept it that way. It's a little more, okay, well, they're not trying to shoehorn this in like they're trying to get you to believe that Earth and Eve is somehow connected to Iron Key in Dark Souls 2. I could believe getting dragged into a painting of a cold and snowy, desolate mountaintop and then actually being there. Yeah, and the fact that the painting is found where it's found, I buy that. Because this is the city of the gods, and I'm sure they had all sorts of magic bullshit going on.
Just magical nonsense.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not terribly incongruous the way they implemented it. And maybe I should shut up and let you concentrate on flame.
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Well, then again, he's almost dead. It looks like you're doing okay.
Well, his AI was going ape shit a second ago. Like worse than it normally does. Like he was just stuck over there by the boss fog. Like,
Yeah, this is one of those fights where the quality of the AI, or rather the lack of quality of the AI, can result in either 50 failed attempts or you just sailing in here on the first try and curb stomping.
yeah.
I'll tell you what was really interesting, Nick, was, I don't know how well acquainted you are with a couple of friends of mine, one Woolly Wolves and one Reggie, Coolest Reggie. They recently played through this game together, or Reggie played through the game, and Wooly was sitting on his shoulder, essentially, as his navvy. And Reggie had never played a Souls game before. And to watch Reggie work his way through this and get to Flame Lurker, and to see his reactions and his approach to Flame Lurker really reminded me just how much you lose after your first playthrough is done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just
I can't believe I botched that. I always forget it gets so fast in the second phase. We had maybe one more hit left. So now we gotta run back and do it again.
And that's one of the worst parts of this, isn't even so much the boss, it's the run back, because this is the short way, and there are so many opportunities to die on the way down that...
Yeah, you definitely have to pay some semblance of attention here, because otherwise you'll...
Yeah.
Can't remember if you can survive this here with just... Yeah, we're good. All right.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, no, I meant with our health. I couldn't remember how much health that took, if it was a little smidge or if it was a ton.
Ah. Okay, yeah, no, what they should have done here was they should have just put an elevator at the bottom of this mine shaft that you could activate once you'd gotten down the first time, and then just send it back up to the top, and every subsequent boss attempt, you just ride the elevator down. They should have, but to their credit, that was one of the things that they on their own, without any feedback or any reflection on prior games, I guess they figured out to do.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick, this.
Oh, awful. The true experience. I guess you fall off right there, and it's so miserable.
This is the FromSoft collision experience.
Well, if you roll to the right, it pushes you, like that rock face pushes you just enough to the right where you slide off of the things instead of breaking them, which happens to me probably every time I do this.
You don't land on the spot you have to land on underneath, yeah.
I have never once thrown for content. I have never done that. People have claimed I'm not doing this on purpose. I just suck sometimes. It's okay. We all do.
You know, considering that the LP tax exists, the idea that anybody would accuse a Twitch streamer of throwing for content is asinine to me.
It's flattering because it's like, oh, you're right. I don't actually suck. Don't tell him. don't tell him.
I'm not incredibly distracted right now trying to carry on a halfway coherent conversation with a friend of mine, never mind also with chat while not dying. Yeah, no, this is all on purpose.
Back onto the Painted World thing. Yeah, like at first I feel like I really enjoyed that zone because it was kind of like this I guess departure, and LP tax is an old it's a term. It's the Let's Play tax, which means just like, all right, let me roll to the correct side this time. Because if you roll to the left, you'll crush into these and you'll knock them all down or whatever. However, if you roll to the right, you hit this, there's like a smidge of rock face that will push you away. So you effectively will get knocked just far enough off so that you won't actually be able to smash the destructible objects there, like the husks, and then you just fall to your death, which is... I mean, it's hilarious, don't get me wrong, but every time I do it, I'm like, oh, God.
I think FromSoft thinks it's a little more hilarious than we think it is.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
Gerald.
The LP tax is it's come into common lexicon. Recently, it's made a resurgence, but Let's Play tax is basically, it's the tax that the content creator or the broadcaster pays. It's a figurative tax in attention when you speak coherently. So the more you're trying to speak, the more heavily your attention is taxed.
Right.
Is what it boils down to. And speaking while playing video games is a relatively unique thing that generally only content creators have to do unless you're sitting at home playing games with your friends, in which case it doesn't matter because no one's really focused on the game. You're all focused on, you know, eating Chex Mix and making fart jokes.
Okay, you went. I like how you went to Chex Mix of all things.
Well, I mean, what's a typical hangout when you have your friends over to play video games in high school? For a guy, anyway. I mean, I didn't hang out with too many girls in high school for a long list of reasons, but when my male friends would come over to hang out, we would basically just sit around and eat pizza, and they would all make off-color, immature jokes, and I would slap my forehead and sigh.
You were friends with mail carriers?
Male friends. Not... Did I say mail carriers?
No, you didn't.
Why are you? Why?
Because you were just like we're friends with mail.
What?
Listen.
I'm slapping my forehead and sighing right now. Nick has just recreated that exact experience.
Perfect. I'm glad to take you back to your childhood.
I don't miss my childhood, if I'm honest.
Take me back to the childhood experience. Whatever. What is he doing? What is this fight?
He's stuck.
He's like, sort of, yeah, I don't... Oh, now
I'll tell you what, this AI loop has not changed in any of the games since. I will be Sparrow Shade, don't worry.
I'm already wet.
Well, I mean, you're fighting Flame Lurker, so that's a benefit here.
Well, I tried to cast Water Veil again. I was like, oh, I've already been re-wetted.
Ah. You just couldn't resist my dad jokes, huh?
Yes, 100%. Come on, Flame Lurker, let me kill you so we don't have to do this again. I have nothing to prove. I'm an old man.
I mean, you're doing okay.
We just don't have a lot of vitality, so if he lays into us, he really lays into us. We also are lacking our moisture. I need to re-moisten. Oh, no, we're good. We're moist.
His attacks seem to hurt a fair bit more than a lot of other bosses in the equivalent second stage zones.
Yeah, I would say that's actually true. Yeah, he's pretty brutal with a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just that there's so little armor in the game for the player that gives decent fire defense. Like, fire damage was always the one thing that you'd hate running into in PvP because there was really no decent protection against it other than Water Veil. Or, you know, like if you were willing to invest the stats in being able to use the Purple Flame Shield or the large Brushwood Shield.
I was about to make a joke and then...
Oh, no. Ouch.
I hate everything. It's okay. This is the most trouble we've had on Flame Lurker in a long time. I hate you, Flame
Lurker in a long time. It's been what? How long?
It's been about a year, so really I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of excuses. Nick, why? What, man? What am I supposed to do? Be good? Shit, you were the wrong channel. I'm not throwing for content. Don't accuse me of this. Come on.
Everyone knows Twitch broadcasters throw for content.
Mm-hmm.
How are we supposed to get people to donate money to us other than out of pity?
That is true. Yeah, this is the pity. It's the pity bait because they're like, God, he's so bad. Let's just hook him up. I wasn't even overconfident. What are you talking about? If anything, I was underconfident, which, you know, say the funny words, old man.
Garrison, was that specifically a comic somebody drew about Nick, or was it something different that someone used in reference? I missed that.
I rolled a left. Overconfidence is just a killer, period, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, Sparrow's absolutely right, Nick. Have you ever thought about just getting good?
That's true. I could get good, or what I could have done... See, I mean, I did level up Vitality a little bit. I put, like, what, 3 points in it? I did it? Y'all always yell at me for not increasing vitality and then making life miserable on myself, but I did it. I got some points.
No one can yell at you for not raising your vitality.
Yeah, man, I did it. I pumped. I'm good. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to do this. All right, let me make sure I got enough pew pew sauce because I think I ran out of that last time, and that was a problem.
Indeed. Hello, King Joker. Welcome. It has been a while. I am all right, thanks. And honestly, I'm especially all right now that I get to hang out with my buddy Nick a little bit.
Okay, look, if we could donate $5 to have it like let us pass or whatever, then it would basically just be a gacha game. So we'd be right. We'd be right there. We'd be all in, but like I would like to pay to leave. See, back in the day, it used to be the cheat codes are what you would use if you wanted to, scoot on past something. Nowadays, it's use your credit card.
Man, I remember cheat codes.
I put 4 points in. See, guys? Come on. I told you. Told you I did the right.
No, Squatus is absolutely right. It would be spending $10 for a JPEG. Honestly, Nick, I haven't had very much luck with NFTs. Those images I posted of the Brussels sprouts au gratin in chat earlier, I tried selling those as NFTs, and nobody's bought them yet, and I can't understand for the life of me why not.
Yeah, I can't either. Yeah, I'd buy them. I'll buy it right now, actually.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, get with me after the show. I'll purchase all of your au gratin fucking NFTs.
Appreciate that. I'm glad I finally found a buyer. You can't offload that shit without the cops getting after you. I'm telling you.
Yeah, they'll take your ass out. You gotta watch out.
And that new NFT division. Pink Blood, that I feel like is a fairly niche and specific NFT.
Oh. All right, let me re-wet myself. Let me get my
Sparrow,
sprite.
it's funny you mentioned the Game Genie, because I had one for the Game Boy back in the day. Yeah, the Game Genie was a relatively inexpensive add-on. It was $15, which I was eventually able to save up for and buy myself. But, yeah, the Game Genie was my introduction to, oh wow, games are made out of code.
Yeah.
And that was what first got me interested in the fact that, well, if you change the code, you can change something about the game, and sometimes that has really cool effects. And sometimes it just causes the game to crash. I suppose you must be Pink Blood if you're that exclusive. Although I have to wonder, how well have you cornered your market there? Because how's business?
I'm so curious as to what's happening, but I can't look.
Oh, Pink Blood said, let me scroll up and find it. 340 Ethereum for this blurry, overexposed photo of my right nut, says Pink Blood.
Wow, just the right though? That is pretty niche. I kind of dig that.
It almost sounds to me like Pink Blood is pulling a Capcom, and he's releasing the incomplete photo with the intention of selling the other half as DLC for the left one.
Oh god. I'm in the blender.
Well, Sparrow Shade, but I feel like modding has, as many cursed things as modding has done, it's done a lot of great things as well.
Oh yeah.
But that wouldn't still be in business if not for their modding community fixing their games after launch.
I feel like they probably would. However, I would say that they're because like their games I think are great on their own, but yeah, the modding community definitely adds a lot of really cool shit. Because I mean, hell, we played plenty of Bethesda games before mods were like a major. Because I would say mods really took off as being a major aspect of those games. Also, we did it. Major aspect of those games probably around. I would actually say Skyrim was the real rocket for it because that was, of course, their most popular title.
Really? Wasn't that still going on as early as, like, Morrowind?
They were,
and,
yeah. Oh, yeah, Morrowind had mods for sure, and so did Oblivion. But I think in terms of, like, widespread mass appeal to modding, I really do feel like that was around Skyrim, because we do have to remember Skyrim was 2011. That was not 5 years ago like it feels like. That was 11. So, but yeah, Oblivion, like, I mean, I played Oblivion on a 360. I played Morrowind on an Xbox and on PC, and I really didn't do, a ton of modding, I think, when it came to PC, but they were available. But yeah, I would say the big pool of mods didn't really show up until Skyrim, because that was definitely when they garnered a lot more popularity with that. But he activate, okay, I'm not gonna he didn't activate the Bethesda rant like all the way through, but we just talk about Bethesda. I'm not going on the rant. It's cool.
I mean, I've played a few Bethesda games. I played Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas in their entirety. I played Fallout 4 up until I fell off the wagon with it because it got so dry and it dragged on so long, and it got so tedious to play. And I got my hands on a review copy of Fallout 76 because I was given a code by an acquaintance of mine who did not want it because he was desperate not to have anything to do with Fallout 76. And yeah,
desperate?
The state that launched in was...
I mean, the state it launched in, even for people who enjoyed it, I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, but they did a lot to remedy that game as quick as they could. And I mean, for all the shit people give Todd Howard, I mean, he talked very openly about that. He was like, yeah, it did not go the way we wanted it to, and we learned a lot from it, and that was all there was to it. Because he's a really good dude. I mean, he's not... There's very few people... We talked about this the other night, for anybody who's probably already heard this, but I'll keep it short. He's one of those few figureheads of game development, I think, that still genuinely cares about the final product and hasn't become like corporate sellout garbage man. And I think he still cares that his games are good. He cares about what people think about him and all that. And I think that counts for a lot these days, because there are a lot of people in his position specifically who have either climbed the ladder or whatever that, just they suck. I mean, they don't give a shit about any of it. Like, they don't care about the product or anything like that. They just care about the money. And he obviously did, but...
Well, I mean, yes, there are definitely lots of scumbags in admin in these game companies, but the claim that Todd Howard is a good guy who cares about making a good product, I have an image of Todd Howard in my mind that does not match up with that, and now I wonder how much of that image is the result of just baseless public derision of Todd Howard for being the PR face of so many games that came out in such a bad state, and that people just assumed that he was willfully deceiving the public. Because you remember he went on stage at E3 a few years ago talking about Fallout 76 and how impressive and how great it was going to be, and it turned out to be a disaster at launch. And he made similar claims about Fallout 4, and Fallout 4 was okay for the first maybe half of the game, and then it started to really fall apart, at least for me. And I kind of get the impression that I'm hearing about two completely different Todd Howards here, where the one you're describing is like this virtuous holdout in an industry full of sexual harassers and wage thieves and people who crunch their teams to death. Mm-hmm. But yet I've heard nightmare stories from within Bethesda, and
you're going to hear nightmare stories from anywhere, but it tends to be more of like, there are some that are obviously bigger offenders than others, and it sucks in a lot of the game industry as a whole due to really big problems. But I do feel like Todd Howard as a person, I think his image was very colored by the memes and all the jokes and all that shit. Like, if you really go sit down and go look at any of the interviews the guy has, considering he was somebody who worked as a line level low base employee, worked his way up at the top, he's still a pretty real individual, all things considered, because most folks, once they get that level of money and clout, become the absolute just scum of the earth. Also, thank you, AP, for the host, and thank you for the resub. What the Dark Souls fuckery is going on over here? We're doing peak, like, 2016 Dark Souls fuckery over here. And Anna, thank you for the resub. Tipsy Tater, thank you for the follow. Thank you, guys. I hope you had fun. Were you doing, let me guess, Lost Ark? You better be number one in that game, dude, because, like, you've been spamming it, and you're good at shit, so... You got to rep. You got to be number one, best forever. I expect no less. But thank you again for the raid, and I appreciate it. You guys are great. But yeah, I think, like, I'm not saying that Todd Howard's like fucking the best man on the planet, but I would say compared to most people in the industry, he still cares about the product. And I know it's a big meme about Bethesda's games not being janky or whatever, but I mean, people buy the shit out of them. they obviously love them, so they continue to go in. I mean, they wouldn't keep making Skyrim for fucking everything if people just stopped buying it. So they obviously keep buying it over and over, and people have logged thousands. And there's not a lot of games out there, and I feel like Bethesda has a very interesting place in the market because there's really not a lot of games out there that really are like Bethesda games, if any. Their games are almost wholly unique in a lot of ways. And for all they're bad and they're good, you know, there's not a lot of games that can make the claim that they do what Bethesda games do. And, you know, again, they're not perfect, but the more I thought about it, and while I would make jokes myself, every Bethesda game I've played through, I've enjoyed, and I've had a good time going back to it as well. So, you know, I feel like to some extent they're obviously doing something right. I mean, yeah, I don't think that's much up for debate.
Games, I suppose, yeah. I mean, I'm coming more from the standpoint of, well, these games were broken at launch. They clearly didn't have the level of QA put into them that they needed. And one of the stories I've heard out of Bethesda was that they're one of the worst studios ever about saying, yeah, we have the best QA team or one of the best QA teams in the industry, but we don't listen to them. You know, that we get the report from QA and 2/3 of it we mark down as WNF or as, you know, non-critical, we're not going to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. My attitude toward that sort of practice is, and you know me, I'm a bit of a holdout and I'm pretty outspoken about this kind of thing, and I'm probably in the minority here. But one of the reasons why I don't stream Nintendo games is because I do not approve of Nintendo's treatment of content creators.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to run the risk of running afoul of their legal department because they're memed to death, and they deserve it for DMCAing their own stream on YouTube.
Oh, they're wicked. And I don't know if you caught in that exact vein, and I hate to interrupt, but just to add on to what you're saying here, I don't know if you've seen the craziness going on with some of their game music that is not legally available for purchase anywhere. Like, you cannot get it, like first-party Nintendo soundtracks, that they're filing massive amounts of content, like takedowns and stuff like that on these YouTube channels that for years have been like, here's some song from Yoshi's Island. Like, who gives a shit? It's not available to purchase anywhere, but yet Nintendo doesn't even offer you, you know, the option to get it. So they are super aggressive. So I understand where your stance comes from on that. Like, I totally get it.
Yeah, so to me, I'm not willing to support a company that thinks of me as a chump or a sucker or, you know, just a resource to be exploited, and certainly not one that goes out of its way to you know, to treat me like that and to say, how dare you try and do something creative with our intellectual property of your own? You will experience it exactly as we dictate you experience it, and so help us, if you try to deviate from that, we will come to your house and, you know, file lawsuits against you. And I don't know, it's that sort of thing. And then the development practices where this developer thinks that I'm so much of a sucker that they can sell me an incomplete game that's broken at launch,
Right.
and I'll happily pay full price for it. And, you know, I keep enabling them to do that, so they have no incentive to stop.
Yeah, and I feel like, so I think enjoying Bethesda's games and, you know, yeah, we could talk about like Horse Armor and how that kind of started its own thing. I would say, I mean, in my opinion, or at least my experience, other companies have been, like Ubisoft and whatever, had been far more predatory when it came to DLC and stuff like that. Because when you really think about it, before that weird debacle they had with the paid mods, which I think kind of fell on its face anyway, because that was, you know, corporate figureheads being idiots and thinking that people were going to be into that. And I'm sure it exists to some extent, but obviously it did not take off in the way that they thought, or did it, you know, halt Nexus mods from hosting a ton of free mods and stuff. But, you know, as far as like companies go, especially in direct comparison, like I said, to Ubisoft and whatever, they really haven't been that bad about DLC, in my opinion. Like, most of it was relatively content rich. I mean, you look at like Skyrim had what, Dragonborn. I guess it had the house building one, which was okay. And then it had the Dawnguard DLC, which was good. Oblivion had Shivering Isles, which is arguably some of the best content that any of the Elder Scrolls games have had. It was awesome. And Morrowind's had expansions, of course, because it was a little bit earlier. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I never really like. I would say the most quote unquote predatory would probably be 76, and the only reason it's that way is because it's a. It has that. I don't think Fallout First should exist, especially with the Atom Store. I just feel like that's kind of pointless to have a subscription service for it. Like, either have one or the other. especially tying the Fallout first thing to the stash. I feel like that's just kind of shitty. But again, as far as like grievances go, in my opinion, I feel like they're probably on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of like, damn, this company sucks. Because like right now, I would assume most people are very anti Ubisoft because they've gone off the deep end with the NFT stuff, and like they don't seem to care. Like they do not seem to care about the feedback at all or anything in regards to that. So
side by side with a company like Ubisoft or Activision or EA, or, there's a long list of companies we could use as examples that, you put them side by side with that sort of thing. But it's the sort of thing that, in any measure, how much is the end user willing to tolerate? And that directly dictates collectively how much the company thinks they can get away with. Yep. And I guess in cases like Ubisoft, they must think that everyone who buys from them is a complete moron if they're going all in on this stuff and figuring, we can get away with it, no problem. People will keep supporting us.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time I played an Ubisoft game. I think the only ones I've had any remote interest in, but I never even played, were maybe some of the later Assassin's Creed games. But the main reason I never tackled those was because they are big open world, and they are very long from what I've gathered. And if most of the time, if it's not a game I'm going to stream, it's a little less likely that I'm probably going to get to it off stream or whatever. But and even those I never got around to, but. It is really strange. Like my entire point of this is that like I've tried to take a look at some of these companies and kind of just see, because I can't. I mean, most of them have done something that pissed me off at some point. But as somebody who has to stream and create content and stuff like that, I can't blacklist every company, right? So I kind of had to start looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, what do I personally find like morally apprehensible that this company would do that would make me not mess around with their stuff. Like I backed off big time on a lot of the Activision Blizzard stuff until they get their shit together, because there's just too many bad things happening from like, again, a really shitty moral standpoint going on there, and I don't want to support that. I've never played any Riot games because of their weird sexual assault allegation stuff going on and lawsuits and whatnot, and I also wasn't ever really particularly interested in them. But I try to put my foot down on what I can, but naturally I can't just say I'm not going to do, or I'm going to blacklist everything, because then I'd be stuck basically playing like nothing but random indies from time to time. So
I totally get that, and I know there's you have to draw the line somewhere. I personally miss the time when the games that I was willing to play were dictated solely by whether or not I was interested in them. I mean, on the one hand, it's good that so much of this stuff has come to light and that it's being talked about, and at the very least, people are more aware of it now. But it's a shame that now, when I'm looking at a game that I think I might be interested in, 50-50, my consideration is, will I like this game, and also, are the developers a bunch of scumbags?
Yeah, and that it's it's definitely a good it's a good thing to look at. I mean, it is important to take a look at because what happens so often enough, and we've talked about this a lot, when you see the big clamor about boycott, and then when a game comes out, people are still jumping all over it, and like so quickly forget the asinine behavior of whatever, because it's time to do X, Y, or Z.
The absolute my favorite one is that one guy, and one guy is capitalized here, it's a proper noun, who he sends out the tweet about boycotting this particular game, and then a day after the game's release, his tweet is, "Go check out my review of this game."
God. Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's worth mentioning that, because that is more often how it goes, where it's like, oh man, fuck this thing in particular, and then now we have to do Dragon God, which I'm not going to be paying much attention for this, so I'm going to go ahead and just assume that this is going to be a mess. So, can you break the trash with spells? I don't think you can.
You can, yes.
Are you sure?
You can, but it takes a while. Yeah, it'll take like 7 or 8. And aiming spells like Soul Arrow in this game is
agony.
A little bit different, yeah, because they now aim whichever direction your camera is facing instead of just straight ahead, only on a vertical axis, which they used to.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, but I normally have more trouble with the first area than I do the second.
Yeah, once you get down to the second area, it's usually not so bad. It's getting past this that's the worst. I have seen a really bizarre bug only in the remake. I've never seen this happen in the original, but a friend of mine was playing this a while ago, and she had the Dragon God punch her, and the fist didn't kill her, but instead she got stuck in it, and the fist dragged her out of the stage and dropped her down at the bottom, and she got stuck there and couldn't hit him.
What? That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really crazy to watch.
Oh.
Well, you've got it in the bag now. You've made it past the hardest part.
Great! Now we'll fail the second part, which I don't think I've ever messed that up, but we're now's the time to do it if we're going to do it.
The second part is smooth sailing. And unless, of course, you want to throw for content again. You know.
No, I do. I throw for content. Yeah, I throw for content all the time, everybody. All the time, you know.
Hunter, I think she might still have a clip of that somewhere. It's Charlie. Charlie Bitney is her username.
Oh, your friend.
You
Yeah, I
ask
remember
her.
you telling me about them, yeah.
Oh, did I introduce you to her?
No, you didn't introduce me, but no, I remember you telling me about the that whole situation.
Ah, okay. Yeah, about how she and I first met probably is what I would have told you.
Oh yeah, because the DBS is not going to be available because we're not in what is it, Pure Black, I think.
Pure black or pure white?
Yeah, did we not go down? Am I losing my mind?
No,
I
you didn't go down. There were,
I just walked back to the left.
Why
I was
did you
like,
come
what am
back
I?
to the entrance? You got through the hardest part of this entire fight.
I
and
know,
then
then
you
I just
went back
walked
through
away.
it.
Well, maybe it was subconsciously. It's like, all right, I did it. I'm out of here. I'm out. See you later.
All right, good luck. Do it again.
Great. No, I'm good. So I wonder if we didn't have any fights like Dragon God or Bed of Chaos in like any of the Souls. Well, I guess technically we had. No, that doesn't really count.
What do you think?
I'm thinking of like big environmental bosses like this. I'm trying to think if there was another one that we maybe. Oh right, the fire. We're dead. Yeah, I'm trying to think of another instance where they. I guess what was his name, Yorm or whatever from
Yeah, Yorm in Dark Souls 3, but Yorm was really just a copy, or it was an attempt to reproduce the Storm King fight, and they've done that in almost every game. This is what I mean, like, you can tell that they just reuse concepts willy-nilly and will change it up at random without any real direction based on prior experience. There have now been so many iterations of the Storm King and Old Monk, right? Yeah. Dark Souls 2, Mirror Knight was an iteration of Old Monk, right? Dark Souls 3, the fight in the DLC in Ring City was just Old Monk, basically.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah, I completely forgot about the. My God, that's insane! I've completely forgotten about the DLC for Dark 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not exactly the most memorable content FromSoft has ever produced. We'll say that. But yeah, and you see that a lot too with. Fortunately, they didn't try another iteration of Bed of Chaos. They learned their lesson on that the first time, at the very least. But
yeah, has Miyazaki ever talked about Bed of Chaos? Like, is that?
Yes. Yeah. In an interview, he fell a little bit short of apologizing for it, but he apologized in that roundabout Japanese way where he admitted that there was an issue with it and said, yeah, I really wish we had done things differently. It sure was unfortunate that we all couldn't agree on a path forward with some of those complex game designs and that we didn't have enough time to fully realize it, is basically the tone of what he said.
I had to turn down the game for chats. I keep forgetting to pull it down for this because.
Oh, because of the roars?
Oh my God, yeah, the audio in this part's so. It's been actually like relatively tame throughout most of it. I'm just looking over it, just blasting out. Just this bit in particular is pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, Toru, and the thing is, apparently nobody told Miyazaki or anyone at FromSoft that it's a good idea not to just do the same thing over and over again because it gets old, you know? And you can remix something as much as you want. You can slap a new coat of paint on it, or, you know, add a little mechanic like a usable item in Dark Souls 3's version of the fight that gives you a unique attack that's only usable during the fight, but it's still basically the same set piece that you've just recycled. And once is really cool, twice, okay, yeah, 3 times, all right, I get the point.
Yeah, I'm stunned
You know?
we haven't gotten another Gargoyles-esque fight after Maneater. Well, it's because we had Maneaters, we had Gargoyles. I guess we got the Gargoyles again in Dark Souls 2, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the
we just-
exact same fight, just with more gargoyles. And it even had the same music from Dark Souls 1's
Right,
Gargoyles
yeah, it
fight.
did. Oh my god.
It was the
That is see,
exact
that's a part of
same.
Dark 2 I've completely forgotten, and that's why I'm actually looking forward to hopefully getting to it before Elden Ring, because there's a lot I want to see again, just because it is such a weird anomaly in the whole like scope of it. And you know, you look at like old Dragon Slayer and all that stuff, like out there cosplaying, and
Yep.
it's just so what a weird thing that game is. Very, very strange.
Like, I was really mad about Dark Souls 2 for a while, but once I started to learn what exactly happened to its development, I mean, I still dislike the game, and I still would not play it again, no matter how much money you donated to me. But I can forgive the dev team for what happened, because it really wasn't their fault.
Yeah, no, they pieced together something pretty impressive in a very short amount of time, because I know we talked
Yeah.
about that like early on. Yeah, they did pretty well, so.
And Yui Tanimura in particular deserves credit for salvaging that game as well as he did, with half a dev cycle and a whole pile of mismatched assets that he had to figure out uses for in time to release a complete game. I mean, working under such dire circumstances, I think he did all right, and I can't be mad that Dark Souls 2 turned out the way it did because of just all the shit that happened to it. And I don't know, like I've kind of, maybe it's just what happens when you get old, is that you become a little bit more tempered on that sort of thing. And I'm certainly getting old. I can't speak to how much more tempered I've become than I was then, but
Oh my god.
I don't know. I can't be mad at the devs who were doing their hardest work to try and save that game.
No, I mean I can't either. And like I said, I think some of my irritation towards it definitely diminished over the years, because I just didn't care as much. And you know, there's things to appreciate about it and things that are irritating or whatever. Here's the comic, by the way, that Garrison was talking about. That says, "Look, it's the oldest internet user in the world. Say the funny
thank
gibberish,
you.
old man."
I was searching for this, but I couldn't find it because I
Can
had
I
no
add
frame
you-
of reference.
Can I add you on MSN Messenger? God Almighty, this is so good. I just love. Can I add you on MSN Messenger? You lack the Oh shit! I forgot about you lack the license for this DLC. Wow. Oh, because that was in Dark 3 with I think Eli and I were playing through it together, and yeah, I remember we got that like early on. It was so funny because it was just like, okay, cool, awesome, and it would just kick you out, which was pretty nuts, honestly.
Yeah, that's the only situation I can think of where I've ever gone, really, FromSoft? DRM?
Yeah, that was ridiculous. Because like I understand it's like some type of authentication for, you know, to validate that you do own the DLC or whatever. Cool, whatever. But the fact that it broke was its own whole thing. Ugh.
Yeah, that was... I wish I could have been there for that. But I suppose you still have the footage, don't you?
Of the Dark 3 run with Eli?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should still be on YouTube, I think.
Okay, maybe I'll go back and check that.
Yeah, God. Yeah, there were several things. I remember a gag that Eli and I had in that one, because it was about something about a crow man who hated himself so much that he was struggling to load a musket so he could shoot himself in the head. I don't really remember the specifics of it, but it was pretty ridiculous at the time. But I think we're probably gonna wrap it up here, because there's only so much sitting I can do after this stupid surgery. But hopefully I'll be back to fully normal here in a couple weeks. But
No problem. I have lost track of the time. I hope I haven't kept you past your normal.
no.
stream
This is
time.
actually pretty good. I didn't think I'd be able to sit for this long, but we were having a lot of fun talking and stuff. So always.
GG, I'm glad you managed.
Yeah, man. But I wanted to say big thank you to old Fresno for coming along again. If you guys do not know of him, you should go follow him on Twitch. He's been busy, so he hasn't streamed much lately, but he will be doing that again soon at some point in the future.
Eventually.
I'm not gonna. What if I just put like a hard date on it and said like 3 months, 2 days, and then.
Well, I
yes,
hope it
well,
won't be any 3 months, but it could end up being 1.5 to 2.
Yeah. And if you guys are new to the stream, you are more than welcome to follow or go check out the Discord and Twitter. And of course, we have a YouTube channel and stuff. That's actually where this VOD is going to be. So if something you missed the beginning of, or you want to go back, there's a recorded version of this that's at much higher quality and all that stuff. Yeah. So that'll probably be the preferred version if you want to go back and watch it, since Twitch's video player sucks ass. So, but no.
Thank you guys all for the kind reception as well. I really appreciate that everybody in Nick's community has been so welcoming and
well, tons of people remember
about
you,
my
of course.
presence.
Yeah. But no, thank you guys all so much. Like I said, I'll be back again tomorrow with this. I don't think Franz is gonna be joining us for that because he's got a ton of stuff to do. So
I do. I wish I could, but
yeah. So
you've
he'll
got,
be.
Go
ahead.
Here we go again.
Don't start this again.
Nick's got a couple of other guests that you've been looking at for future streams as well. Do you not?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm gonna try to do that anyway, but we'll see. We'll see what that whole thing looks like. It depends on time too, because I'd like to get some of these done before Elden Ring. Whoever asked when Dark Souls 4 comes out, I think Dark Souls 4 comes out on the 25th. 25th? I thought it was 23rd.
25th. Yep.
All right. Well, there you go. So, which we'll be doing that at launch too. But again, if you're new to the stream, you're more than welcome to follow and go check out the Poop Tube and all that stuff. But that is going to be it for me. Thank you again, Franz, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, y'all have a great night. Take it easy. I'll see you later. Goodbye.
Good night, everyone.